Chapter 1969. Hong Do couldn't believe what he was seeing. That white-robed man was so dazzling that his eyes stung. This was a cultivator who had once been on par with him, but now he was dominating the most powerful war on the entire Chu continent. This was like a dream come true. And Lin, who would have thought that you would rise to power at such a terrifying rate? Hong Do was in a daze as he looked at Lin in the distance. Gradually, a hint of yearning and anticipation appeared in his eyes. It would be great if you could put an end to this war, it thought to itself, but in the end it shook its head. This was not a war that one or two people could influence. The true power of the heavenly human tribe was still hidden beneath the surface of the iceberg, and Lin could be considered a huge variable at most. But he wasn't powerful enough to face off against the paramount heavenly gods. The crisp cry of a bird suddenly sounded. Vermilion bird Nan Li flapped its wings, and the pure and scorching Nan Li holy flames descended from the sky, engulfing over 10,000 living beings in the creation realm like a monstrous tidal wave. Their bodies were burned into ashes, and it was a gruesome sight to behold. Hong Do was given a fright. This place wasn't far from him. He immediately hid behind a mountain. The holy flames of Nan Li incinerated all things, and vermilion bird Nan Li burned wherever it went, creating a river of flames in its wake. Half of the mountain that Hong Do was hiding behind had been melted, and this was only because vermilion bird Nan Li had passed by nearby. Hong Do himself had also sustained light burns. He was a flame-type powerful being, but he had been inadvertently burned by his opponent's flames. How humiliating was that? Similar scenes were playing out elsewhere on the battlefield. After all, 9 Dao integration stage vermilion birds had suddenly appeared on the battlefield, and the enemies didn't even have time to stop them. These vermilion birds were like runaway horses, burning everything in their path while chanting, "Long live the great Empress, Vermilion Bird!" The 6 vermilion bird sages had recovered significantly after a period of rest and recuperation. At their peak, they were powerful beings capable of destroying planets. They were the ultimate weapons of the vermilion bird tribe, and they could even destroy an entire planet. At this moment, they were unleashing their holy flames to their heart's content, and the destructive power they unleashed was far more than just nuclear explosions. In less than a few minutes, millions of enemies had been killed by the boundless holy flames. The direction of the battle had been changed by them, and Lin's invincible display and the fearsome display of the vermilion birds caused the morale of the fleeing kingdom of the 9 States United Army to skyrocket, and they began to launch a counterattack. Quick, stop them! The Heaven Pioneer stage great generals of the heavenly human tribe sprang into action, borrowing the power of the heavens to attack the vermilion birds. I'll stop it! A heavenly human tribe great general with a profound and ethereal aura charged toward a vermilion bird that was releasing golden flames. He muttered to himself as he pointed one finger at the sky and the other at vermilion bird Huanjin. Rumble! A mighty force suddenly descended from the heavens. It was a white pillar of light that contained a terrifying suppressive force. It crashed violently onto vermilion bird Huan, Jin's body, and sent her crashing to the ground. So what if you're a vermilion bird? Now that you've joined the battle, you should be prepared to face the wrath of the heavens. The great general diviner looked down from above with an arrogant expression. However, all of a sudden, vermilion bird Huan Jin disappeared from the ground, leaving behind a massive black hole, as if the white pillar of light had merely crashed into the ground. The heavenly human tribe great general's expression shifted. At this moment, scorching heat swept toward him. A vermilion bird had appeared in front of him with a smile on its face. So what if you're punished by the heavens? Long live great Empress, Vermilion Bird. Boundless golden flames engulfed the heavenly human tribe great general as soon as his voice fell. Vermilion Bird Huan, Jin's forte, lay in creating illusions of flames. It was clear that the heavenly human tribe great general had fallen victim to its illusions and died an inexplicable death. In the eyes of onlookers, it looked like the heavenly human tribe great general had unleashed a beam of holy light toward the ground like an idiot before mumbling something to show off. In the end, his body had been engulfed by vermilion bird Huan, Jin's holy flames. All of the onlookers' hearts trembled upon seeing this. These vermilion birds were way too powerful. Cultivators of the same cultivation base in the realm of stars were actually quite a bit weaker than cultivators on the Tai Chu continent. However, the 6 vermilion bird sages were different. They possessed bloodlines that were close to that of holy beasts and were far more powerful than Tao integration stage cultivators in the realm of stars. Furthermore, they had been nurtured by the power of Su Xiaolan's vermilion bird heart essence, so they were already showing signs of being reborn. The heavenly slaughter god was feeling quite uneasy upon seeing this, and he was contemplating whether he should retreat. At this moment, Yun Menjing's attacks became even more ferocious. Not only that, but a vermilion bird with Yu Luo, holy flames burning all over its body, also pounced toward him. You piece of sh*t, you think you can interfere in my battle? Die. The heavenly slaughter god flared up with rage upon seeing this, and he swung his scythe toward vermilion bird Yu Luo. Vermilion bird Yu Luo remained fearless as its holy flames imbued with extremely powerful heaven-crushing true intent swept forth in a frenzy. Long live great empress, vermilion bird. Boom! Violent and powerful flames clashed with the heavenly slaughter god's scythe, and a ring-shaped wave of flames exploded in the air. Vermilion bird Yu Luo let loose a wail of anguish as a ghastly gash appeared on its wing. The heavenly slaughter god was also knocked back a few steps by the holy flames, and an expression of astonishment appeared on his face. This vermilion bird was this powerful? Yun Menjing was also astonished. What the hell was with such a ghastly name? Also, wasn't this attack way too terrifying? She only faltered for a split second before taking advantage of this opportunity to continue attacking the heavenly slaughter god. At this moment, vermilion birdbing Xan also pounced toward her to assist her. She then yelled, "Long live great Empress Vermilion Bird," as her icy blue flames swept toward the heavenly slaughter god in a frenzy. All right, names weren't important anymore. As long as they were happy, they could yell whatever they liked. The name was ghastly, but it was indeed very powerful. It was extremely close to the power unleashed by heavenly disciple candidates, and it was enough to pose a threat to heavenly gods. The 2 vermilion birds teamed up with Yun Menjing against the heavenly slaughter god, and they gradually gained the upper hand. At this moment, Michael was probably the only one in a sorry state. He had already been killed over a dozen times, and if it weren't for the fact that he possessed the holy light indestructible body, he would have died a long time ago. He was still being chased by a heavenly god. That heavenly god wielded the power of heart, which allowed him to unleash the most unfathomable and unfathomable attacks. I have already found a way to kill you. The heavenly emotion goddess chuckled as a ball of white light transformed over and over again in her hand, and a ferocious expression appeared on her face. I'll break your holy light immortal body, kill you, and then get away. That way this trip won't be too bad. Oh, I'm here, and you're still trying to get away? A crisp, pleasant voice suddenly sounded. Whoosh! A crimson sword projection fell from the heavens at an extremely fast speed before transforming into an earth-shattering sword projection that instantly sliced through the heavenly emotion goddess arm. All of the living beings' eyes widened upon seeing this. The azure-robed figure that had been overlooked by all of the living beings began to stir the world. Chapter 1970. Michael couldn't believe his eyes. The invincible heavenly emotion goddess had just had her arm severed by a single sword strike. Who was this little girl? That's right, the powerful being who had sliced off the heavenly emotion goddess arm was a petite little girl in a jade dress with her hair tied up in twin ponytails. Since when had such an exceptional, powerful being appeared on the Tai Chu continent? Wait, that divine sword with lightning and fire intertwining around it looked a little familiar. The heavenly emotion goddess was just as astonished as everyone else. The heavenly emotion goddess was well aware of just how terrifying that sword strike was. Even though it was a sneak attack, the speed and power imbued within the sword were all far superior to that of heavenly disciple candidates like Michael. "Who are you?" The heavenly emotion goddess couldn't help but ask as she looked at the petite little girl before her. The little girl shook the blood off her divine sword before raising her chin slightly. 4-9 Immortal Sect, Flame Pavilion Pavilion Lord, Su Xiaolan, she said in a childish and cold voice. The entire battlefield instantly fell silent. Everyone's eyes widened in shock. Su Xiaolan? This little girl was the divine phoenix maiden. The heavenly emotion goddess faltered slightly upon hearing this. Michael was even more dumbstruck. All of the living beings present were struck by incredulity. How had Su Xiaolan become so powerful? And how had she become such an adorable lowly? Could it be that the more adorable she was, the more powerful she was? Su Xiaolan didn't waste any more time with words as she slashed her dragon sparrow sword toward the heavenly emotion goddess. Prior to her trip to the realm of stars, she was already just barely able to battle a heavenly god. After her trip to the realm of stars, she had progressed to the Tao integration pinnacle stage, reached the true dragon pinnacle stage, and attained the vermilion bird holy birth. Even she didn't know how bad asterisk she had become. In any case, she wasn't scared at all against normal heavenly gods. Su Xiaolan wielded her dragon sparrow sword and perfectly fused the Tao of the true dragon and vermilion bird as she charged fearlessly toward the heavenly emotion goddess, unleashing one profound sword projection after another. Each and every one of her sword projections seemed to be imbued with the power of a vermilion bird, striking the heavenly emotion goddess with boundless might. The heavenly emotion goddess attacks were all punctured by Su Xiaolan, and a dozen or so wounds were inflicted on her body in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, countless strange pupils appeared around him. Heart control, fear. The densely packed eyes began to release invisible waves that instantly struck Su Xiaolan's body. Su Xiaolan's movements suddenly slowed down, and a trace of fear appeared in her eyes. It was as if the enemy in front of her was an extremely terrifying existence, and if she didn't escape, she would be hacked to death in the next second. A cruel smile appeared on the heavenly emotion goddess' face as she pounced toward Su Xiaolan at an extremely fast speed. A white light enshrouded her hand as she prepared to stab it into her chest. Su Xiaolan's heart skipped a beat, and her fearful eyes suddenly became clear again. The vermilion bird heart essence was a pure heart. In the blink of an eye, Su Xiaolan evaded the heavenly emotion goddess' hand by a hair's breadth. At the same time, she flipped her wrist over, and the dragon sparrow sword fell like a bolt of lightning, instantly tearing apart the heavenly emotion goddess arm. Ah! The heavenly emotion goddess let loose a wail of anguish as she hurtled back in retreat. Both of her arms had been sliced off by Su Xiaolan, and she was in an extremely sorry state. The heavenly emotion goddess' beautiful features suddenly became extremely pitiful. Not only were the heavenly human tribe united army soldiers feeling extremely sympathetic toward her, but even the living beings of the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army were feeling extremely sympathetic toward her. However, Su Xiaolan was completely unaffected, and she continued to pounce toward the heavenly emotion goddess with a cold smile on her face. The heavenly emotion goddess was extremely shocked. Why wasn't her emotions affecting Su Xiaolan? One had to realize that she was most proficient in manipulating emotions. Even Michael, who had the most resolute Tao heart and perfect heaven-crushing true intent, was unable to escape her interference. How could this petite little girl remain completely unaffected? Was her heart made of stone? It wasn't actually a stone, but it was even more difficult to influence than a stone. This was because the vermilion bird heart essence resided within Little Land's heart, which was an eternal existence that transcended beyond heaven and earth. With the protection of the vermilion bird heart essence, it was impossible for the heavenly emotion goddess to influence Little Land's heart through the power of the heavenly gods. No, the heavenly emotion goddess' eyes suddenly closed at the sight of the oncoming Su Xiaolin. Extreme grief reverberated throughout heaven and earth. All of the living beings within a radius of over 500 kilometers suddenly burst into tears. Boundless grief welled up in their hearts, and some of them even resorted to committing suicide on the spot. However, Su Xiaolin, who was at the epicenter of all of this, remained completely unmoved. The heavenly emotion goddess had been dealt a heavy blow, but she refused to give up and continued to unleash emotional attacks. Rage. Love. Do you like me? Whoosh! Su Xiaolan slashed her sword through the air, slicing the heavenly emotion goddess waist open. She smiled. I like to cut you down. The divine halo above the heavenly emotion goddess' head began to crack open. No. The heavenly emotion goddess was on the brink of a mental breakdown. Joy. A smile finally appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. The heavenly emotion goddess thought that she had finally been influenced. However, Su Xiaolan's dragon sparrow sword did not stop there. She continued to attack with a smile on her face. An innocent smile appeared on the little girl's face. I'm so happy to see you in such despair. The heavenly emotion goddess. At this moment, Su Xiaolan's dragon sparrow sword fell again, inflicting a bone-deep wound on the heavenly emotion goddess' chest. The heavenly emotion goddess was truly in despair. She dragged her riddled body through the air and hurtled back in retreat, giving up on the idea of attacking Su Xiaolan with her emotions. I've changed my mind. A crazed expression appeared on the heavenly emotion goddess' face as she looked at the relentless Su Xiaolan. I'm not going to run anymore. I'm going to kill you. She had never felt so defeated before. Even if she had to run, she was going to teach Su Xiaolan a lesson first, no matter the price. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. The heavenly emotion goddess suddenly turned around, and light erupted from the divine halo above her head. The cracks on her divine halo began to spread, but the paramount heavenly god aura emanating from her body only became more terrifying. She tossed a budding lotus flower toward Su Xiaolan. Come out, the being you once feared the most. A sinister smile appeared on the heavenly emotion goddess' face as she clapped her hands together and injected her power into the lotus flower. This is the perfect manifestation of the heavenly emotion lotus, and it can summon the being you once feared the most. You are very powerful, but the being you feared the most is even more powerful, so you can just let them deal with you. The heavenly emotion goddess was confident in her victory. Immediately afterward, a crimson skeleton wielding a scythe and a thin and feeble void spirit tribe living being wielding a divine staff appeared in her field of vision. They were none other than the god engulfing skeleton and Ember. Not only were their auras very similar, but their powers were also almost identical. Su Xiaolan. Vermilion bird essential technique. Heavenly flight annihilation. Crimson essential power roared and completely engulfed the god engulfing skeleton and Ember. Ah! The two of them let loose blood-curdling cries before being incinerated on the spot. The heavenly emotion goddess was scared ***less. What happened to the enemies she feared the most? He was insta-killed, just like that. Was the enemy you feared so weak? Whoosh! The vermilion bird essential power continued onward, transforming into a dazzling sword projection that sliced the heavenly emotion goddess' body cleanly in half. Everything had happened far too quickly, to the point where the heavenly emotion goddess had no time to evade. Su Xiaolan held her dragon sparrow sword and looked at the heavenly emotion goddess with a calm expression. I have nothing to fear now. Chapter 1971. Su Xiaolan had completely crushed the heavenly emotion goddess. This scene completely shocked all of the allied forces and enemies present. They had already experienced for themselves just how powerful a heavenly god was. However, a heavenly god like this was being pummeled by Su Xiaolan. She didn't even have a chance to injure Su Xiaolan. What kind of sorrow was this? This was a massive visual shock. Those who didn't know better would be wondering why the heavenly gods had suddenly become so weak. In reality, what had truly changed was Su Xiaolan's power. Everyone could accept that Enlin was extremely bad asterisk. After all, Enlin had always been a force to be reckoned with, so they were already prepared for this. However, Su Xiaolan's power was far inferior to even Michael's. It had only been less than a year since the heavenly god's execution live stream. So how had she become so powerful? Was this the rhythm of husband and wife cheating together? The heavenly emotion goddess. The heavenly slaughter god's pupils contracted at the sight of the heavenly emotion goddess, who had been sliced in half. His eyes gradually regained clarity, and he began to consider retreating. If things continued like this, all of them were going to die here. Retreat. Heavenly Human Tribe United Army, retreat. The heavenly slaughter god yelled at the army on the battlefield. His voice was imbued with authority, and it spread to every corner of heaven and earth. All of the living beings who were fighting were astonished. How could this be? All of the creation realm powerful beings were in disbelief. Had they really been defeated? The Western divine dragon, who was battling the blood-fong vermilion bird in the air above, spat. *CK, I've been wanting to leave for a long time. Has he finally given the order? He spread open his wings and fled into the distance without even a word of farewell. The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army had absolute obedience to the heavenly gods. They had wings which allowed them to flee even faster. Just as the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army retreated like the receding tide, the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army began a frenzied counterattack. Charge! Don't let them get away! Kill one, and you'll earn one. Everyone charge! Avenge our fallen brothers! One light-winged clan being after another threw spears of light toward the fleeing living beings. The monk soldiers unleashed one golden spell technique after another to kill all of the nearby Void Spirit Tribe living beings. The experts of the True Demon Tribe were the craziest. They tore celestials, hollow spirits, and western dragons apart with their bare hands. All enemies that stood in their way would be torn apart. A burly true demon who was clad in black armor and wielding a gigantic coffin-like crimson sword stepped on the corpse of a western mystical dragon. He was bathed in a rain of blood as he laughed heartily. Very good. The True Demon Tribe has Cyril, while the humans have Enlin and Su Xiaolan. This battle has really given me a lot of surprises, and I'm really looking forward to the future of history. Rumble, the great Tao of heaven and earth began to mourn. The fall of the divine dragon triggered the heaven and earth mourning phenomenon. This Tao integration stage true demon had just slain a Tao integration stage divine dragon. The super powerful being from the True Demon Tribe did not look pleased at all. Instead, he looked at the two battles in the distance. The more he looked, the more incredulous he felt. Whether it was Enlin or Su Xiaolan, it couldn't understand the power that they were displaying at the moment. What kind of power was this? Why was there such a massive disparity between them when they were both at the Tao integration pinnacle stage? No, Enlin seemed to be at the return to void pinnacle stage. With this in mind, the super powerful being instinctively drew a sharp intake of breath. So be it. It was too frustrating to think about this. Boom! An earth-shattering boom suddenly erupted in the distance. Enlin crushed the heavenly temperature god into the ground again with his invincible power and speed. The aftermath of the fist force caused the ground to sink and crack, and countless mountains to turn into dust. More and more cracks appeared on the heavenly temperature god's divine halo. He finally experienced what despair was. Not only was he no match for Enlin, but even escape was an extravagant hope. What kind of man was this? Was there really someone who could stop him? The heavenly temperature god looked up at the white robe in the sky, which was a little too dazzling under the sunlight. No, this was way too much. At the same time, the little girl in the jade dress was also the center of attention. She held a dragon sparrow sword in her hand, and her exquisite jade dress made her appear very adorable and harmless. But no one dared to underestimate her. The heavenly emotion goddess, who had been sliced in half, transformed into two streaks of white light that fled into the distance. Little Xiaolan's brows furrowed slightly, and her eyes transformed into the golden eyes of a true dragon. She gripped the air, upon which countless bolts of lightning shot forth, intertwining to form a cage of lightning that sealed off the heavenly emotion goddess' path of retreat. As long as my heart remains, my body shall exist forever. The two streaks of light combined as one again to form the unscathed heavenly emotion goddess. This heavenly god looked like she was fully focused on resurrecting herself, but the cracks on her divine halo had already given her away. Su Xiaolan knew that if she continued to slash him a few more times, he would be dead. All that talk about how her heart remained unscathed and her body existed forever was just a bluff. As long as she had enough power, she would be able to strike despair into her heart and see if her heart remained. Both of the heavenly gods had been forced into a corner. The kingdom of the 9 States United Army was already in a state of frenzy, but they couldn't help but glance at the battle taking place in the distance. All of them knew that as long as those two heavenly gods were slain, they would be able to secure a perfect victory. And Lin didn't waste any time. He clenched his fists, and the golden halo behind him quickly rotated as 5 types of pinnacle powers flowed into his fist like flowing water. He fell from the sky like a shooting star before aiming his fist directly at the heavenly temperature god's head. He was going to completely destroy the heavenly temperature god with this attack. The heavenly temperature god also began to struggle as a blue aura erupted from his body, freezing everything in place. Superdimensional, low temperature. Realm boundary, all things stop. A blue aura proliferated, turning everything between heaven and earth into black and white. However, Enlin was like an unreasonable, ferocious beast as he tore through the black and white of heaven and earth and incinerated the super-dimensional, low temperature. Even the silent world was unable to stop his iron fist. Have a taste of my iron fist of love. A sinister smile appeared on Enlin's face as he launched his fist toward the heavenly temperature god's face. The heavenly temperature god's mouth gaped open, and his mind went completely blank. Enough! A light voice suddenly sounded. It wasn't very loud, but all of the living beings on the ground could hear it. A semi-transparent yellow youth appeared before the heavenly temperature god before extending a palm to defend himself against Enlin's fist. Boom! The terrifying power behind Enlin's fist exploded forth. The entire earth tremored violently, encompassing an area with a radius of several thousand kilometers. However, strangely enough, the earth didn't cave in any further. He was able to perfectly defend against my full power punch. And Lin looked at the youth who had suddenly appeared before him, then at the greenish-yellow divine halo, and his pupils contracted slightly as he suddenly thought of a saying. Heaven, earth, black, and yellow I rank second. My power exists in this world. He was one of the 6 paramount heavenly gods, the heavenly earth god. Chapter 1972. And Lin's expression instantly became extremely grave. He knew very well what a paramount heavenly god entailed. Not only were they the most powerful forms that the heavens could unleash, but they were also representatives of paramount laws that transcended beyond the powers of ordinary heavenly gods. And Lin had never truly fought a paramount heavenly god before. However, he had seen a paramount heavenly god fight. Chun Chen was able to easily slap away divine heaven stage heavenly humans who had unleashed their most powerful techniques and divine halos. However, he was only able to gain a slight advantage over the heavenly earth god. In fact, Chin had even sustained severe wounds in the face of the enraged heavenly light goddess. And Lin would never forget the scenes he had witnessed in the land of eternal light. The earth had been transformed into boundless lava, and a series of colossal lava dragons had erupted into the sky, causing heaven and earth to tremble violently. A majestic body of light that reached the heavens, and it looked like it was releasing a supreme Taoist technique. That's right, and Lin knew just how powerful a paramount heavenly god was. He had also seen what a paramount heavenly god looked like in battle. Hence, he was feeling extremely grave now. At the same time, he was also feeling unprecedented excitement. "Take another punch from me." And Lin clenched his other fist, and 5-colored power revolved around it, creating a light that was even more dazzling than the sun. He activated his 5-elemental body to its maximum extent, and his heaven-crushing true intent surged forth at the same time. Fist of the heavenly Tao. The fist expanded infinitely, and it was as if it were a divine hammer capable of destroying the heavenly Tao as it crashed viciously toward the heavenly earth god's face. A hint of emotion appeared in the heavenly earth god's cold eyes. He was clearly not expecting Lin to still dare to attack after recognizing him. He extended his other palm to meet the attack. Boom! An indescribable power erupted forth. And Lin could guarantee that if this fist were to strike a normal planet, it would definitely be able to shatter the planet. However, he felt as if he had struck a massive continent that struck despair in the face of the heavenly earth god's palm. This continent was extremely grand, indescribable, immeasurable, and boundless. No matter how powerful he was, there was no way he could break through this boundless continent. The power of the fist was sucked clean by the heavenly earth god's palm. The earth trembled violently once more. This time, the core of the tremor covered an area of over 10,000 kilometers. And Lin was suddenly enlightened. The heavenly earth god had perfectly transferred all of his power to the surface of the Tai Chu continent. It was also at this moment that a burst of heaven-crushing power suddenly disrupted this perfect transformation. Crack! Boom! The ground within a radius of several thousand meters suddenly cracked and caved in. The heavenly earth god's feet also slid back a few meters. Even Lin was surprised by this scene. He couldn't help but grin. "What? I thought you would never move." The heavenly earth god. The delicate-looking youth was indeed a little surprised. He didn't expect Lin's combat power to increase so much in such a short period of time. The power of the 5 elements combined with the power of heaven-crushing was able to break the balance of the earth. "Do you still want to fight?" the heavenly earth god asked. And Lin was a little surprised. "You don't seem to have much hostility towards me. Now is not the time for a decisive battle. If I fight you to the death, my enemies will take advantage of the situation," the heavenly earth god replied in an indifferent voice. A smile appeared on Lin's face. "What's bad for you is good for me. I love doing things that annoy you the most. Eat this." Fist of the heavenly Tao. The 5-elemental ring behind Lin revolved, and heaven-crushing true intent poured forth from his fist. The heavenly earth god. "You can't stop me." The heavenly earth god no longer defended himself. Instead, he unleashed a fist of his own. A faint, greenish-yellow divine light enshrouded his fist. When the fist fell, Lin was greeted by the sight of the boundless earth crashing down upon him. It was impossible to describe what a terrifying feeling this was. A sense of powerlessness, a sense of suffocation, a sense of insignificance. Countless negative emotions welled up in his heart at this moment. This was not an emotional disturbance. Instead, it was an instinctive sense of horror and trepidation. F*CKU. And Lin was a reckless man, and even though he was a little fearful, he also had boundless battle intent, and his fist of the heavenly Tao fell with even more determination. Boom! Heaven and earth suddenly tremored at the same time. The five-colored light clashed with the greenish-yellow divine light, and it was as if two planets had crashed into each other. The area within a radius of several hundred kilometers was reduced to a vast expanse of empty space, and Lin's arm crumbled, and blood splattered through the air. His bones were instantly pulverized, and his body was knocked flying for tens of thousands of meters. The heavenly Earth God was also unable to dispel the full force of Lin's attack, and he was knocked back a few steps. A wisp of white smoke began to rise from his translucent fist, and a faint crack could be seen on it. The heavenly temperature God stood behind the heavenly Earth God, and his eyes widened as he momentarily forgot to breathe. And Lin had wounded the heavenly Earth God. At this moment, the heavenly Earth God had already turned around. "What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and run." The heavenly temperature God came to his senses. The heavenly Earth God had come here to save them. Yes. The heavenly temperature God nodded respectfully before flying into the distance as a streak of scorching white light. However, he hadn't even gotten more than 50 kilometers away when he suddenly sensed a terrifying aura approaching him. "Don't go!" A white-robed cultivator pounced toward him with a cruel expression. The heavenly temperature God was astonished. Hadn't Lin gone insane? Didn't he know that the heavenly Earth God was on the battlefield? How could he abandon the heavenly Earth God to kill him? This was a blatant slap to the face. Sure enough, in the next instant, the heavenly Earth God appeared beside Lin, and his fist was imbued with a greenish-yellow light as it hurtled toward Lin. And Lin could take the heavenly Earth God's attack head-on and attack the heavenly temperature God. In that case, he might be able to kill the heavenly temperature God, but he could also be pummeled to death. Was it worth it? Right at this moment, a blood-curdling cry erupted in the distance. The heavenly emotion goddess had been sliced in half by Su Xiaolan again. The heavenly Earth God's expression shifted, and he finally realized what Lin was trying to do. And Lin was not chasing after the heavenly temperature God just to kill him. Instead, he was trying to lure him away from Su Xiaolan so that Su Xiaolan would have a chance to kill the heavenly emotion goddess without any interference. The heavenly Earth God immediately unleashed a fist toward Lin, and Lin responded with a fist of his own. Bam! A terrifying collision erupted, and the purest and most boundless power of the earth crashed viciously toward Lin. And Lin's arm cracked open again, and his body flew back like a cannonball. However, his extraordinary regenerative abilities allowed him to regenerate his arm as he flew through the air. He then suddenly stopped in midair before pouncing toward the heavenly Earth God again. And Lin was taking the initiative to attack the heavenly Earth God. The heavenly Earth God retaliated. Bam, bam, bam. The two of them exchanged a few more punches, and Lin was on the back foot every single time. But the heavenly Earth God seemed to be wary of something as it refrained from killing Lin, nor did it unleash its full power. And Lin knew that he was no match for the heavenly Earth God in his current state. That was what he was thinking. But the spectators didn't think so. They looked on at the two of them clashing so quickly that they couldn't even be seen. All they could see were balls of terrifying energy exploding in the air, and all of them were completely dumbstruck. It was as if everything that was unfolding before their eyes had already transcended beyond their wildest imaginations. And Lin, he was able to hold his own against the heavenly Earth God. Chapter 1973. The battle between Lin and the heavenly Earth God was simply too powerful. No one below the Tao integration stage was able to see what was going on. Even Tao integration stage, super mighty figures were able to see what was going on. They could see Lin's hand being blasted apart over and over again, only to quickly regenerate within a second before continuing to battle the heavenly Earth God with no fear of death. Hongdo was even more dumbstruck. And Lin was on par with the heavenly Earth God. The heavenly Earth God was one of the most powerful beings in the entire heavenly human tribe. Normal heavenly gods couldn't compare to him, but Enlil was able to hold his own against him. Was this world already this bizarre? The three heavenly disciple candidates, the battling Buddha, Yunmenjing and Michael, were all dumbstruck. They had thought that Enlil was only an ordinary heavenly disciple who was about as powerful as the ancient dragon empress, or at most a little more powerful. But now, it looked like Enlil was on a completely different level from them. Enlil's heaven-crushing technique was more powerful than anything they had ever seen. Not only that, but after combining the heaven-crushing technique with some kind of special power, the power it unleashed was even more earth-shattering. No wonder Chin Chin and Cyril insisted on leaving the position of third heavenly disciple to Enlil. Meanwhile, at the location where Su Xiaolan was battling, as long as my heart remains, my body exists forever. The heavenly emotion goddess voice reverberated through the air, and the two halves of the heavenly emotion goddess body reformed. Essential power, heaven-crushing god-slaying technique. Little Xiaolan spread open her dazzling vermilion bird wings, and as she flapped her wings, she closed the distance between them at an incredible speed. She reached the heavenly emotion goddess almost in the blink of an eye before plunging her dragon sparrow sword into the heavenly emotion goddess body again. Boom! A crimson sword intent pierced through the air for over 1,000 kilometers, as if the crimson river of hell had parted the heavens. The heavenly emotion goddess face was filled with despair. She had been insta-killed as soon as she revived. What was going on? Couldn't she just fight normally? This was the 6th time she had been slain. The divine halo above her head was already riddled with cracks, and it was about to collapse. As long as my heart remains, my body exists forever. The heavenly emotion goddess's feeble voice sounded. Origin power, heaven-shattering god punishing. Rumble. The heavenly emotion goddess exploded again. Little Xiaolan panted lightly as she held her dragon sparrow sword, but a cold light flashed through her eyes. Faster! Faster! Enlil had fought for so much time for her, she couldn't waste it. She was going to kill the heavenly emotion goddess today. As long as my heart remains, my body, origin power, heavenly punishment, little Xiaolan raised her dragon sparrow, soared high into the air, and waited for the heavenly emotion goddess to revive. The heavenly emotion goddess had a mental breakdown. F***CK, I haven't even resurrected yet, and you're already unleashing your trump card. I'm a mighty heavenly god. Did I revive just to eat your trump card? The heavenly emotion goddess was very indignant and humiliated. My body is eternal, heaven-shattering, god-slaying. Rumble. The heavenly emotion goddess had only just materialized her body when the dragon sparrow sword punctured her body, upon which the scorching vermilion bird essential power incinerated her body into nothingness. All of the enemies and allies on the battlefield were shocked and couldn't help but sympathize with the heavenly god who had been alive for less than a second. This was way too tragic. Being insta-killed once was not enough. She was going to be insta-killed countless times. She was a mighty boss, but she was being killed by little Xiaolan. All of them wanted to report little Xiaolan to the heavenly god. As long as my heart remains, my body, little Xiaolan raised her dragon sparrow, soared high into the air. Origin power, heavenly punishment. My body, my body. Wah! Her sobbing voice reverberated through the air. Little Xiaolan. All of the onlookers. What the F***CK? Was she crying from being slaughtered? All of a sudden, countless terrifying projections appeared in the air. There were evil ghosts, bloodthirsty Shuras, fiend celestial Armageddon. All of the projections enshrouded Su Xiaolan as terrifying auras enshrouded her. Roar! I'll kill you. I'll kill you even if I have to give up everything. One projection after another materialized before pouncing toward Su Xiaolan in a frenzy. Little Xiaolan's petite body remained unscathed amid the storm, but a faint smile appeared on her face. Are you going to stake everything on this one attack? That means you've reached your limit. Her eyes suddenly turned a vibrant red. There was a hint of seductive charm in her pure and holy eyes, and a hint of pride and aloofness in her transcendent eyes. God-slaying sword. Little Xiaolan spoke in an indifferent voice, and her crimson vermilion bird essential power expanded to take on the form of a vermilion bird. She then flapped her wings, and all of the projections were reduced to nothingness by her essential power. The heavenly emotion goddess expression was still frozen on her face when Su Xiaolan appeared before her, and her dragon sparrow sword plunged viciously into her chest before puncturing through her body. "You're dead." Little Xiaolan stared at the heavenly emotion goddess with her crimson eyes. "Air!" The heavenly emotion goddess opened her mouth, only to find that she was unable to utter a single word. The scorching vermilion bird essential power flames engulfed her slender body. Crack! A crisp crack erupted as her divine halo was completely pulverized. Heavenly emotion goddess. No. All of the heavenly human tribe soldiers were grief-stricken upon seeing this. Every single heavenly deity had a profound meaning to them. They were what they pursued and believed in. But now, a heavenly deity actually died on the battlefield, dying miserably under the witness of millions upon millions of soldiers. This was an extremely great blow to them. The heavenly emotion goddess had been incinerated into nothingness. Only a burst of invisible power returned to the heavenly Tao. The kingdom of the 9 states united army's morale was greatly boosted, and they charged forward with even more fearlessness. What was bad *SS? What AF King bad *SS was that when a paramount heavenly god appeared and threatened to save the heavenly gods, they were still able to slay the heavenly gods right before their very eyes. This was the equivalent of slapping the paramount heavenly gods in the face. What a hearty, heart-stirring feeling. With the kingdom of the 9 states united army still scared now, even the heavenly earth god couldn't do anything to Enlin and Su Xiaolan, so what did they have to be scared of? Thus, the kingdom of the 9 states united army became extremely courageous, while the heavenly human tribe united army retreated in an even more disheveled manner. Countless enemy soldiers were being slain with every passing second. The heavenly earth god's expression darkened upon seeing the heavenly emotion goddess being slain. He no longer exchanged blows with Enlin. Instead, he took one of Enlin's punches head-on before unleashing a punch toward Enlin's heart. This punch was far too fast, and Enlin had no time to defend himself. The boundless power behind the punch caved in Enlin's chest, and his back bulged before exploding into a bloody hole. PFFF! And Lin threw up a mouthful of blood as he flew through the air. The heavenly earth god's body also swayed violently, and it was impossible to determine his injuries. He took an indifferent glance at Enlin before disappearing into the ground. Enlin lay on the ground and looked at the fleeing heavenly gods. He listened to the battle cries around him, and a joyful smile appeared on his face. They had won this battle. They had secured a resounding victory. Chapter 1974. 1 hour later, the battle drew to a conclusion. The kingdom of the 9 states united army had sacrificed around 10 million soldiers in this battle, but they had slain over 20 million enemies. This had to do with their high morale, as well as the heavenly human tribe united army's disheveled retreat, as well as the 9 vermilion birds. Both sides had lost a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure. However, the heavenly emotion goddess had fallen, and that was the most significant accomplishment. The heavenly temperature god and the heavenly slaughter god had escaped. No one could catch them anymore. All in all, in this battle, the coalition army of the 9 states had achieved a perfect victory, sweeping away the atmosphere of despair from before. In particular, their allies were still able to slay a heavenly god despite the fact that even the heavenly earth god had been mobilized. To them, this was extremely exciting. If the heavenly earth god hadn't stepped in, the haters would probably have said, "What's there to be happy about?" The enemy boss hadn't even appeared yet. So no matter how many victories they won now, the enemy was going to come back sooner or later. However, The heavenly earth god had stepped in to stop Enlin and the others from killing a heavenly god. But Enlin and Su Xiaolan were still able to hold off the heavenly earth god while the heavenly earth god was slain by the other. How were they supposed to retort now? There was no way to retort. The heavenly earth god's face had been slapped swollen. Where else could the haters go? Without a doubt, this was a perfect victory. All of the tribes were celebrating this victory in a peculiar realm, within an intricate and antiquated house. The woman wore a divine robe and had a fresh and elegant appearance, and she was ceaselessly fiddling with a Tao wheel. Your Majesty, I have important news to report. A woman with a white snake tail had a flushed blush on her cheeks, and her eyes were filled with scorching light. Little Bai, why are you in such a hurry? The woman asked with a gentle expression. The snake woman in a black dress leaned against the door frame. You're probably reporting about the battle between the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army and the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army, right? We're going to the east to provide reinforcements, so what's the big deal? White Spirit Snake immediately shook her head. It's different this time. How so? Did a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure die? Black Spirit Snake's brows perked up slightly. The heavenly emotion goddess is dead. White Spirit Snake replied. Black Spirit Snake's expression shifted upon hearing this. This is indeed a big deal. And he killed the heavenly emotion goddess right in front of the heavenly earth god. White Spirit Snake was extremely excited. Black Spirit Snake was astonished. Goddess Niwa also stopped fiddling with the Tao wheel, and she was momentarily stunned. Obviously, this matter had also exceeded her expectations. Is it Enlin and Su Xiaolan? Goddess Niwa asked. Yes. White Spirit Snake nodded with excitement. Enlin held off the heavenly earth god, while Su Xiaolan slew the heavenly emotion goddess. Goddess Niwa smiled. You've done well. What a pleasant surprise. Black Spirit Snake was dumbstruck. Stall the heavenly earth god. Was Enlin already that heaven-defying? In the eastern region of the Tai Chu continent, Dawn City, the celestial Dharch hung up the voice transmission before looking up into the sky with a blank expression. After a short while, he turned to Yiling, Xiaozhe, and Xiao Tu with a complex expression on his face, all of whom had also received the news. They were clearly just being humble. At the West Sea Alliance, Lan Xiaoni looked at the latest news, and a joyful smile appeared on her face. Big Boss Enlin really is the most powerful. No matter where he goes, he's always the most dazzling presence. Wah, what do I do? Lan Xiaoni pursed her lips as her heart raced. I'm about to become your fangirl. When are you coming to the West Sea? The heavenly sea god has already appeared. I really want to see you. The mermaid princess murmur sounded within the palace with indescribable longing. News of this battle spread like wildfire among all of the major powers. News of this quickly spread to the news media, upon which the entire Tai Chu continent erupted into an uproar. Enlin had appeared out of thin air and was on par with the heavenly earth god. This news shocked all of the living beings present. What was going on? Enlin was only able to hold his own against normal heavenly gods not long ago, but he was now able to hold his own against paramount heavenly gods? What the F***CK was going on? Too many living beings were in complete disbelief. However, this did not slow down Enlin's progress in the slightest. That's right, Enlin had once again dominated all of the headlines on the Tai Chu continent. His fame once again shook the continent. Under the admiration and awe of countless living beings, this white-robed cultivator from the east was further deified. At the same time, Su Xiaolan's killing of the heavenly emotion goddess was only second to Enlin in terms of fame, and she was the subject of much heated discussion. The fact that she had been revered as the great empress Vermilion Bird by the 9 Tao integration stage Vermilion Birds created a massive stir across the entire continent. The title of the Divine Phoenix Divine Maiden was now fully deserved. Other people's Emperor Fu Tian and Emperor Ri Tian were all fake. Why don't you try to defy the heavens and sun the heavens? However, the Divine Phoenix Divine Maiden was the real vermilion bird, the real Great Empress. Her Tao title was the Divine Phoenix Divine Maiden. Not only was Su Xiaolan the goddess of the Kingdom of the Nine States, but she was also quickly becoming the goddess of the entire Tai Chu continent. Her halo was so bright that normal female cultivators didn't even dare to look her in the eyes. After witnessing the terrifying power displayed by Lin and Su Xiaolan, many of the higher-ups of the major powers had declared the 4-9 Immortal sect to be the #1 sect in the Kingdom of the Nine States. They were even more powerful than the Celestial Court. Not only was this acknowledged by all of the major powers, but it was also acknowledged by all of the living beings. The leader of the 5 great sects, the 4-9 Immortal sect, had officially overtaken the Celestial Court and become the #1 sect in the Kingdom of the Nine States. Some of the residents of the Kingdom of the Nine States sighed with emotion upon seeing this. How many tens of thousands of years had it been since the Celestial Court's position had been shaken? How long had the 4-9 Immortal sect only risen to prominence? They had only been dead for over 100 years, but they had miraculously turned the tables? Everyone sighed with emotion, but they were also genuinely elated. This sect had created far too many miracles and had always been the main force in the war against the heavenly human tribe. How many things had the 4-9 Immortal sect done for itinerant cultivators? How many enemies had it slain? How many disciples and elders had it sacrificed? Its appearance represented the revival and counterattack of the human race. It represented that the human race could create countless possibilities, and it brought hope to the human race. Since it had done all of this, the status it had now was fully deserved. Even the immortals of the Celestial Court were momentarily dazed upon hearing this news before smiling and acknowledging the 4-9 Immortal sect status. Some filthy rich immortals even boasted to their friends that they had tasted sect leader and Lin's cooking. Some filthy rich immortals even retorted, not only had they tasted sect leader and Lin's cooking, but they had also tasted the Divine Phoenix Maiden's cooking. Everyone burst into raucous laughter upon hearing this. Come to think of it, this chef-god couple had a very deep history with the Celestial Court. All of the immortals could still recall the two of them back then. Before they knew it, a small sapling had grown into a massive tree that obscured the entire sky. That's right. Who would have thought that the couple who had worked so hard to make a living in the Celestial Court would become mighty figures whose names resounded throughout the entire Tai Chu continent? One day later, the Celestial Court issued a statement to the entire continent, congratulating the 4-9 Immortal sect for achieving yet another glorious victory. They hoped that the 4-9 Immortal sect would lead the Kingdom of the Nine States and the human race to victory. The 4-9 Immortal sect had officially become the #1 sect in the Kingdom of the Nine States. Chapter 1975. On the central front of the Tai Chu continent, the main city of the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army, Yutong City. The moon was as bright as water, and the sea of stars was as vast as a sea. Under the beautiful night sky, a courtyard with a pleasant view, and Lin looked at his handsome figure in the newspaper, and he couldn't help but bask in self-admiration. So handsome, he sighed with emotion. Little Xiaolan sipped some hot tea in an unhurried manner. She was very small, but she was making tea in an extremely smooth and fluid manner, giving her a peculiar sense of beauty. All right, you've already said it over a dozen times. I know you're handsome, all right? Little Xiaolan rolled her eyes at the sight of Lin's expression. Little Xiaolan, do you like me? And Lin suddenly asked. Huh. Little Xiaolan's hand that was holding the teacup faltered slightly, and a blush appeared on her face. Of course I like it. Isn't that obvious? Me too. And Lin smiled. Little Xiaolan was a little embarrassed. I know you like me, I mean, I also like myself, and Lin replied. Little Xiaolan. And Lin looked at the man in the white robe in the newspaper and sighed with emotion. He's so handsome, little Xiaolan. The battle on the Central Front settled down for the time being. The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army seemed to be wary of Lin and Su Xiaolan, and they didn't attack as aggressively as before. At most, they sent some powerful beings to scout out the kingdom of the 9 States United Army. The two sides entered a stalemate. All of the higher-ups on the Central Front elected Lin as their paramount leader, and Lin had initially wanted to decline in a roundabout manner, but the battling Buddha, Yun Menjing, Michael, and Demon Lord Dekka had all unanimously recommended him as their paramount leader. They expressed that no one was more suitable for this position than him, and they wouldn't accept any other powerful beings as their leader. Under the pressure of all of the powerful beings present, and Lin could only reluctantly accept this position and become the paramount leader of the heaven-crushing United Army on the Central Front. After that, he continued to sit in his lounge chair and indulge in his own self-satisfaction as he read his newspaper. Just like the battling Buddha and Demon Lord Dekka, he was the type of person who would fight, 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 fight. His battle plan was to charge forward recklessly. Therefore, the task of military strategy and deployment of various forces fell to Yun Menjing and Mi Jialai. Although Lin had taken over the position of the highest leader of the central line of battle, he still ate and drank as he should, and it did not affect his current leisure at all. And Lin, what was it like battling the heavenly earth god? Would you have been able to win in a battle to the death? Su Xiaolan slowly picked up the teacup and sipped the fragrant, hot, immortal tea. She narrowed her beautiful eyes and asked softly, When I fought him, I always felt that I was so small. And Lin recalled the feeling he had during the battle. This is a feeling caused by the force of his own attribute. The earth, for ordinary living beings, represents the nurturing of all things and is endless. It is an extremely great thing, and it can also be said to be the pinnacle of matter. The Tai Chu continent is boundlessly vast, and there are countless planets in the realm of stars. All of these things are essentially Earth. No matter what kind of living being it is, it will always feel small and insignificant in the face of an existence that represents all matter. And Lin heaped praise upon the heavenly earth god before suddenly changing the subject. However, it actually has a limit. Or rather, the heavenly earth god does have a limit. The heavenly earth god is being restricted by the will of the heavenly Tao, so he can only unleash very little power. This gives me an opening. After fusing the power of the 5 elements with the power of heaven crushing, I can break through his defenses. Furthermore, I still have many trump cards that I haven't used yet, so I have at least a 10% chance of winning in a battle to the death. Little Xiaolan's lips twitched upon hearing this. You've prepared for so long, but you only have a 10% chance of winning in the end. Don't underestimate paramount heavenly gods. They are terrifyingly powerful. I tried to bite a chunk of flesh off the heavenly earth god's body, but I was unable to do so. Why do you want to bite his flesh? I want to see what the flesh of a paramount heavenly god tastes like. Hey, you'll become more powerful if you eat it, right? Little Xiaolan, you're so smart. How am I supposed to respond to that? Next time, I'll be responsible for cutting the flesh off, and you'll be responsible for eating it. Little Xiaolan patted her chest in a domineering manner, and Lin was stunned by the sight of this green-clothed girl. The moonlight shone down on the girl's immature and flawless face, which glowed with a mesmerizing, jade-like luster. "Give me a kiss, little Xiaolan," and Lin said. "You." Little Xiaolan was a little hesitant. "Then kiss my cheek," and Lin replied with a smile. "Soon," and Lin detected a fragrant scent wafting toward him. And Lin kissed little Xiaolan's cheek in return, and a blush appeared on her cheeks. And Lin was extremely tempted by this. Little Xiaolan's body had become smaller, but why did it seem like she had also become more shy? In the past, she wouldn't even panic when kissing him. Just as he was thinking this, his hand was suddenly gripped by a pair of soft, warm hands, and Lin raised his head to discover that little Xiaolan was looking at him with a serious expression on her face. "And Lin, I want to grow up quickly so I can marry you." Little Xiaolan's pink lips parted as she spoke. Her pleasant voice reverberated by in Lin's ears, sending ripples through his heart. Little Xiaolan had confessed to him what a special feeling. Why did he feel like he was a child bride? And Lin felt like a door to a whole new world was slowly opening before him. "Little Xiaolan, when are you going to grow up?" And Lin asked with a hint of anticipation in his eyes. I don't know. When I completely grow up will most likely be when the vermilion bird heart essence is completely repaired and completely fuses with me." Little Xiaolan supported her chin with a contemplative expression. Little Xiaolan was extremely adorable when she was deep in thought, and Lin couldn't help but rub little Xiaolan's soft cheeks. Little Xiaolan's beauty wasn't to the point where she could mesmerize all living beings, but her cheeks were extraordinarily smooth to the touch. Little Xiaolan slapped Lin's hand away with a disdainful expression. "If you want to rub your face, go find little Xia. Little Xia will tell me to piss off," and Lin replied. "Little Xiaolan, piss off." And Lin blinked. All right, the moon was very beautiful. The two of them chatted for a long time before going back to rest late at night. The first rays of dawn appeared, and Lin was meditating. The door to his room was gently pushed open. Immediately afterward, a familiar fragrance wafted through the air. "Here's a good morning kiss." A sweet, pleasant voice sounded, and Lin opened his eyes, and his expression gradually became sluggish. A beautiful and pure young girl was blinking her limpid autumn eyes, looking at him with a sweet smile. She wore a snowy white dress, and her figure was tall and slender. Her long, black hair fell to her waist, and her translucent skin glowed like ivory under the morning light. Her smile was brimming with youthfulness. The young woman was very pleased with herself upon seeing Lin's astonished expression, and a mischievous smile appeared on her face. 15-year-old Xiaolan, good morning to you." Her voice was as pleasant and light as the most beautiful heavenly music. Thump! And Lin's heart convulsed. Crap, this was the feeling of falling in love. Chapter 1976. And Lin felt like there was a celestial maiden standing before him. She had a flawless figure, flawless features, and a pair of eyes that were as clear as a spring. She was peerlessly beautiful, pure and flawless. The aura of youth wafted toward him, and Lin, a man in his 20s, was tempted. She was full of vigor and invincibility. "Look at you. Do you really have to be like this? Have you never seen a beautiful woman before?" Su Xiaolan couldn't help but grumble at Lin's scorching gaze, and Lin blushed as he coughed dryly. According to the customs of the Kingdom of the 9 States, a 15-year-old girl should be able to get married, right? Su Xiaolan faltered slightly before a blush appeared on her face. "Tui, pervert." Su Xiaolan grumbled before turning to leave. Hey, don't go. You don't have to get married." And Lin immediately gave chase. "Let's be friends." Within the white nectar sea, at the summit of the divine tree, a woman with long green hair plucked a vibrant flower that was imbued with divine power and placed it into her mouth before chewing lightly. Delicious." A little bird flew to her side before speaking in a crisp voice. "Life, Nuwa has already progressed to the 3rd stage of her mending of the heavens. Will we run out of time? If she succeeds, all of us heavenly gods will perish." A faint smile appeared on the woman's face as she shook her head. This woman was none other than one of the 6 paramount heavenly gods, the heavenly life goddess. "Don't panic. Nuwa has a prerequisite for her mending of the heavens, and she has no chance of accomplishing it now. Otherwise, earth and light would have already lost their patience." The heavenly life goddess smiled. The little bird nodded, then looked at the giant colored egg hanging with countless vines under a tree branch and asked curiously, "What are you making?" The woman stroked the colorful eggshell, and even the little bird was struck by an indescribable sense of fear. "This is the perfect life form. It is my masterpiece." The heavenly life goddess smiled. "I'm really looking forward to its birth. What will it look like? How powerful will it be? Will it be able to sweep away all obstacles before us?" Little Bird said in a deep voice. "Don't create something that you can't control." The heavenly life god's orange eyes lit up, and a faint smile appeared on her face. "The essence of life has always been uncontrollable. Otherwise, where do you think the transcendent beings came from? Life represents infinite possibilities. Even if I created an ant, it would still be uncontrollable." The little bird was silent for a moment before saying, "The probability is different." The heavenly life goddess shook her head. "The probability is different, but the meaning is the same." "I don't understand," the little bird said. The heavenly life goddess tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and looked up at the starry sky before spreading open her slender arms with a smile on her face. "They all represent reality and hope. They are the most beautiful things in the world. Since the symbolism is the same, why not create ants instead of perfect life forms?" The little bird asked. "Are you stupid? How am I supposed to fight Enlin by creating ants?" The heavenly life goddess snapped. "Little bird, wait, why do I feel like I've stumbled into a dead end?" However, Enlin's combat prowess is already comparable to the heavenly earth god in his normal state, and he killed the heavenly emotion goddess right in front of the heavenly earth god. Haha, even I feel bad for the heavenly earth god. I'm really looking forward to when they fight to the death. The heavenly life goddess's eyes were filled with anticipation. His combat prowess is indeed very powerful. It's a pleasant surprise. The little bird nodded. By the way, how is the heavenly sea god doing? Did he really agree to join us? The heavenly life goddess asked. The little bird chirped. That's right. He's hiding his true strength very well. But he is indeed leaning toward us and has agreed to cooperate with us to destroy light and earth. The heavenly life goddess chuckled. Stupid light and earth. They don't even know which side the heavenly sea is leaning toward. I'm really looking forward to seeing their expressions when they discover that the heavenly sea has betrayed them. The heavenly sea is an out-and-out destroyer. He believes that the ocean can nurture and reproduce everything, and he looks down on all living beings on the Tai-Chu continent. The little bird said in an indifferent voice, "That's the way it should be. This false world must be restarted. All life forms must be purified in order to usher in a new dawn." The heavenly life goddess spoke in a firm voice. Heavenly sea, when did he say he's going to act? I can't wait any longer." The woman was itching to go. "There's no hurry. He said he's going to act when the final battle begins," the little bird replied. The woman stroked the huge, colorful egg, and a hint of a smile appeared on her face. "Just wait a little longer. You'll be able to come out very soon." And Lynn was currently sitting with a young woman under the moonlight. Young Orchid was at the age where she was experiencing her first awakening of love. Her performance could be said to be very inexperienced, and even in Lynn's teasing would cause a faint blush to appear on her face. And Lynn was actually quite perplexed. He had once asked her if she had only become younger in appearance, but why had her personality become like young Orchid as well? Su Xiaolan replied with a blush on her face. This was the result of nature, and Enlin was completely baffled by her explanation. However, this wasn't a big issue. To put it more accurately, he really liked Enlin, and Lin took young Orchid with him to admire all of the flowers in Yutong City and take her to eat all of the delicious food in the city. My God, look over there. Who is Enlin shopping with? They're holding hands and walking into the White Jade Seafood Restaurant. Groups of Light Wing Clan female students on the streets whispered to each other. Wow, That girl is so beautiful. She's even more beautiful than our archangel. Is that the point? What about our divine phoenix maiden? Isn't Lin cheating on big sister Xiaolan? A light-wing clan female student asked. Big sister Xiaolan has become a lowly. It's not a bad idea for Big Boss and Lin to interact with other female students. Some of the female students were quite open-minded. The Lightwing clan were all superstars, and they loved to gossip about celebrities. In their eyes, and Lin was the biggest celebrity, and the gossip about him could be described as earth-shattering. Just as all of the female cultivators were in a frenzy of gossip, news of Lin cheating on Xiaolan spread like wildfire in the Lightwing clan's inner circle. Finally, this news reached the ears of the 6 vermilion bird sages. Within the seafood restaurant, Su Xiaolan and Lin were currently enjoying the seafood delicacies as they chatted merrily with one another. A voice transmission talisman suddenly flashed. Young Orchid picked up the voice transmission talisman, upon which Vermilion Bird Nan Li's enraged voice sounded. Great Empress Vermilion Bird, you've been cheated on by Lin. Vermilion Bird Nan Li was enraged. Su Xiaolan. And Lin was eating a delicious prawn when the prawn skin fell off the table. Young Orchid's face convulsed slightly, but she still maintained her composure. What is it? Tell me slowly. How did I get cheated on by Lin? Someone discovered that Lin went shopping with an extremely beautiful young woman in a white dress today. Several Light-Wing clan female students witnessed this. Vermilion Bird Nan Li was enraged. Su Xiaolan and Lin, that young woman is around 168 meters tall, has waist-length hair, a red jade hairpin, and a crimson bracelet on her wrist. Su Xiaolan was speechless. That seems to be the case. Do you want us to secretly burn her? Vermilion Bird Nan Li was filled with righteous indignation. Su Xiaolan's lips twitched. She suddenly felt like this was absurd. *CK. In this day and age, anything could happen. I've cheated on myself. Chapter 1977. Great Empress Vermilion Bird. Just give the command, and we'll burn that woman. Lowly trash like her deserves to be purified by holy flames. Vermilion Bird Nan Li roared with rage. PFFF. And Lin couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of spicy crayfish. Teenage Xiaolan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Was he scolding her right in front of her and threatening to burn her? What kind of expression was she putting on when she had such a loyal C***NT? All right, let's stop here. Teenage Xiaolan snapped. Why do we have to stop? You can't just give in. Otherwise, you'll be cuckolded even more times. Vermilion Bird Nan Li spoke with a pained expression. I'm the woman in the white dress you're talking about. Teenage Xiaolan chuckled coldly. Debate. What? Vermilion Bird Nan Li stuttered as if it had received an extremely heavy blow. Slap. Teenage Xiaolan ended the voice transmission, and Lin couldn't help but burst into laughter at the sight of the enraged teenage Xiaolan. What are you laughing at? Teenage Xiaolan glared at Lin as she pursed her lips. Don't be angry. The misunderstanding has been resolved. Let's eat seafood. And Lin smiled as he placed some food onto teenage Xiaolan's plate. Su Xiaolan was now in her youthful form, and her beauty was tinged with a hint of playfulness and liveliness. She was very different from her Lolita appearance in the past, so it was no wonder that people would mistake her for her. Who would have thought that a Lolita would turn out to be a teenage Xiaolan? And Lin and Su Xiaolan continued to live happily ever after. Vermilion Bird Nan Li personally stepped forward to clarify the rumors and declared that the beautiful woman in the white dress was their great empress, Vermilion Bird. This created quite a stir in Yutong City. Of course, these things did not affect the two protagonists at all. They continued to play and eat as they should, like an immortal couple, very happy and happy. They didn't have to fight, so they could live happily. This was their attitude. Their divine sense could encompass an area with a radius of over 5,000 kilometers. This was the best type of human-shaped surveillance platform. No matter what their enemies were planning to do, they could accurately detect them. Skirmishes were completely meaningless now. The next battle was very likely to be the decisive battle. What to do before the final battle? Of course, it was to adjust his state. That was what Lin and Su Xiaolan did. And Lin held Maidenland's small hand. Her hand is so smooth and tender. After walking for a while, he couldn't help but hug Maidenland's slender waist. Not only was her waist very thin, but it was also very elastic. Not only was it warm, but it also had a faint fragrance. And Lin danced with joy, and then was patted lightly by Maidenland. Her clear eyes glared the man beside her with a warning look, and Lin immediately became obedient. Actually, it's not bad now. One must know when to be content. Happy days always pass quickly. Unknowingly, 3 beautiful days had passed. The prismatic, thumb-sized crystal that Lin carried with him suddenly lit up. He was surprised at first, but then he laughed. There was finally news from the heavenly sea god. This crystal was the heavenly sea god's heart clone. Using it to communicate could avoid detection from the paramount heavenly gods, and it was a top-secret method of communication. And Lin immediately injected his consciousness into the prismatic crystal. Mr. Lin, sorry to keep you waiting. A boundless voice sounded in his mind. Mr. Sea God, you didn't keep me waiting. You even appeared on the Tai Chu continent before our agreed time. And Lin transmitted his voice to the heavenly sea god. I do need to explain this to you. The heavenly sea god said, even though I came out of seclusion early, I didn't harm anyone on our side. And Lin's lips twitched. Then what's going on with the various natural disasters in the West Sea? Those are all extravagant displays. If I don't do something like that, the other paramount heavenly gods will become suspicious of me, the heavenly sea god said in a resigned voice. And Lin thought about it for a moment. It really did seem like extravagant displays were necessary for a boss to make an appearance. This was a convention. When did such a *cat-up convention start? And Lin was still very displeased with the heavenly sea god's actions. But he knew that this was not the time to be bickering about these things. There were more important things that he had to take care of. The reason why I descended early is because Nuos mending of the heavens has reached the 3rd stage, and the heavenly Tao barrier is becoming more and more solid. If I don't descend to the Tai Chu continent now, I'm afraid I won't be able to do so anymore. The heavenly sea god sighed, and Lin's expression shifted slightly. What's the 3rd stage of mending the heavens? Don't you know, Nuwa? You don't even know this. The heavenly sea god was a little surprised. I didn't ask. An awkward expression appeared on Lin's face. She didn't tell you either? The heavenly sea god was shocked, and Lin heaved a faint sigh. She only told me about this after I joined the heaven mending sect. The heavenly sea god immediately replied, Then join. But I don't want to be bound by any power, and I don't want to do things that I don't want to do. I feel like it's a trap. And Lin voiced his thoughts. Are you stupid? The heavenly sea god was exasperated. Join and enjoy your power first. As for whether or not you want to fulfill your obligations, that's all up to you. You're not weak anymore. So who can force you to do something if you don't want to? If worst comes to worst, you can just join a power and get a free meal before leaving. What's so difficult about that? And Lin's mouth gaped open in astonishment. How could he be so shameless? He couldn't believe that this was coming from the heavenly sea god's mouth. He was a paramount heavenly god. So why was he spouting nonsense like a scoundrel? Did he have no shame? Did he have no dignity? Did he have no dignity as a paramount heavenly god? That's a good idea. And Lin nodded. A gratified smile appeared on the heavenly sea god's face. You've finally been enlightened. In the past, you would do anything to achieve your goals. You were as evil as you could get. Don't slander me. I'm in Lin now, and I'm a mighty, righteous man. And Lin spoke with a firm expression. Yes, 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 you're right, the heavenly sea god replied. Aren't we getting off topic? What's the third stage of Nuwa's mending of the heavens? And Lin suddenly thought of something important. The heavenly sea god replied, the third stage is to establish a structure to mend the flaws in the heavenly Tao. Only with a skeleton can one develop flesh and blood. Once the structure is complete, the heavenly Tao will be further perfected, and the barrier will become more resolute. If I don't enter the Tai Chu continent now, I'm afraid that I'll really be stuck outside. So I entered the Tai Chu continent ahead of time. However, entering the Tai Chu continent ahead of time also inflicted severe injuries upon me, and I'll need time to recover. And Lin was a little astonished. This Nuwa's mending of the heavens was quite impressive. To think that a paramount heavenly god would almost be unable to enter the Tai Chu continent. Wouldn't it be much better than crushing the heavens? And Lin thought to himself for a moment before asking, how long will it take for you to recover? Are we going to wait for you to recover before we act? The heavenly sea god replied, there's no need for that. Let me tell you some good news. I've successfully established contact with the heavenly life goddess and the heavenly heaven god, and I'll pretend to be working with them to deal with light and earth. When the time comes, we'll find an opportunity to betray them and kill the four paramount heavenly gods, and Lin. Chapter 1978. And Lin was once again astonished by the heavenly sea god's actions. What was going on? Was this going to be a show? On the surface, the heavenly sea god was on the same side as light and earth, but now he was on the same side as life and sky. However, that was also fake. The heavenly sea god had actually formed an alliance with him, a three-way battle. The heavenly sea god was going to fly, and Lin didn't know what to say for a moment. Do you have a detailed plan? And Lin asked. The heavenly sea god replied, the heaven-crushing sect is about to launch an all-out attack. When that time comes, the situation will be extremely unpredictable. All we can do is play it by ear. And Lin, play it by ear? Was this *King brainless plan? The heaven-mending sect has already progressed to the third stage of mending the heavens. So why aren't you stopping her? And Lin was perplexed. Mending the heavens is in accordance with the heavenly Tao. If we attack Nuwa, we will suffer a backlash from the heavenly Tao. The heavenly sea god was speechless. Why don't you know anything? Why are you living like an idiot? Air. And Lin wore an awkward expression. That's not what I'm after. I'm after freedom and freedom. After all, the more I know, the more karma I'll have to bear. Then why are you asking me these questions now? Aren't you contradicting yourself? The heavenly sea god asked with a smile. Because I want to take responsibility, and Lin replied. The heavenly sea god fell silent for a moment. By the way, Brother C, are you free right now? And Lin asked, what do you mean? I'll do my best to help you. The heavenly sea god didn't like to beat around the bush, so he cut to the chase. And Lin was ecstatic to hear this. Can you let me have a bite? The heavenly sea god's heart jolted. What do you mean? That's exactly what it means. Let me take a bite of your flesh, and I'll become more powerful after eating your flesh. Just a small bite, and you'll be able to obtain an even more powerful companion. And Lin explained patiently. That's right, the condition for him to progress to the Tao integration stage was to eat the flesh of a paramount heavenly god. This condition appeared to be super difficult to achieve. But don't forget that he had Brother Hai. The heavenly sea god was also a paramount heavenly god. The heavenly sea god was dumbstruck for over 10 seconds. If you're my brother, then let me bite you. And Lin said anxiously. The heavenly sea god coughed lightly. I think I know what's going on now. You're trying to absorb the essence of a paramount heavenly god to unlock the power of darkness within your body, right? And Lin blinked, and he suddenly felt like he had been enlightened. However, it's true that I've been injured. If I also injure my essence, it'll be an irreversible blow to me, and it might even affect my ability to become a complete heavenly Tao. So, I'm really sorry, the heavenly sea god said in a dejected voice. I see. All right then. And Lin was also very disappointed, but there was nothing he could do. Something like this had to be consensual. If the heavenly sea god couldn't do it, then there was nothing he could do. Don't worry, I'll help you slice off the flesh of the other paramount heavenly gods, the heavenly sea god promised with an earnest expression. And Lin was a little taken aback. Why did these words sound so familiar? I'll contact you when I have a plan. I can use the excuse that I'm still recovering from the backlash as an excuse, but my subordinates have to fight. Tell Lan Xiaoni to send some unimportant troops to fight against the Western Heavenly Gate army. Don't be too harmonious, that would be too fake, the heavenly sea god said. He had decided to put on an act, so he had to put on a good show, and Lin naturally understood this, and he nodded in agreement. Thus, both sides ended the call, and Lin looked up into the sky with complex emotions. He was originally just a nobody, an ordinary person who wanted to live a peaceful and stable life. However, before he knew it, even though he had tried his best to avoid the vortex of battle, he had still found himself at the center of the vortex in the end. There were some things that he had no choice in. He was bound to too many people, and too many people had made their way into his heart, all of whom he wanted to protect. The heavenly gods wanted to destroy the human race and kill his friends and brothers. So how could he just stand by and do nothing? He couldn't just stand by and do nothing. Seeing as that was the case, he might as well step into the center of the vortex instead. He would fight against the most powerful enemy and turn the world upside down. And Lin understood what he was really thinking, and his eyes became clearer and more determined. And Lin, it's time to eat. I've made some delicious food for you today. A young woman's pleasant voice sounded from outside the door. I'm coming. And Lin smiled gently and quickly walked out of the door. Although Su Xiaolan was a young woman now, she still had a strong point, and that was that she loved to study food and cook delicious food for Lin. During the past few days, they had tasted all the delicacies in Yutong City, and Su Xiaolan had gained some inspiration for cooking. She could not wait to drag Lin into an experiment, and Lin was also happy to do so. After all, Su Xiaolan had the foundation of a cooking god, so no matter how she prepared the dish, it would definitely be delicious. And Lin came to the dining table with anticipation, and his expression gradually became blank as he looked at the delicacies on the table. What is this? And Lin's eyes widened. This is a dish that I've been inspired to cook, Su Xiaolan said with a smile. A rich green color surged on the table. All kinds of green vegetables and spirit materials released a dazzling green light, illuminating his vision. Everywhere he looked, he saw green mountains and clear waters. It was an extremely natural environment. Heart of green vine, treasure ocean octopus, 9 heavens green grass, green hippopotamus, treasure spirit green fungus. All of the dishes looked very delicious, but they were all green in color, and when they were gathered together, they created an extremely strange scene that made Lin's legs turn to jelly. Just imagine a table that was completely green, and it was glowing with a green light. Isn't this a little too green? And Lin's voice trembled. Su Xiaolan blinked as she tapped her chin with her finger. It's all right. Green represents environmental protection and health. So it's all right to be green. It's also a special feature. And Lin was very flustered. Xiaolan, have you been traumatized? A faint smile appeared on teenage Lan's face. No, it's just that I suddenly had an epiphany when I cuckolded myself last time, and I felt like I could make a green dish for myself to taste. This is the crystallization of my inspiration. And Lin's lips twitched. This was not the crystallization of inspiration. This was a landslide of inspiration. Come, and Lin, it's time to drink your medicine. This is green dance grass soup. It can relieve a day of exhaustion and nourish your stomach. Teenage Lon brought a bowl of green soup to Lin's mouth in a thoughtful manner. Chapter 1979. A familiar feeling suddenly welled up in his heart, and Lin recalled the horror of being drugged by Xiaolan again. Xiaolan, you have to believe me. I love you. He opened his mouth with tears in his eyes and swallowed a mouthful of the green soup that Xiaolan was feeding him. This soup is quite delicious. And Lin faltered slightly before suddenly feeling like it was quite delicious. Is it good? A mesmerizing smile appeared on teenage Xiaolan's peerlessly beautiful features. It's delicious. Xiaolan's cooking is always delicious. And Lin nodded with an honest expression. Drink more if you like it. It's healthy and environmentally friendly. Teenage Xiaolan picked up the spoon with a practiced hand and fed Lin the soup. The two of them were so happy that they forgot about the green dishes on the table. And Lin then bravely tasted all of the dishes on the table to find that even though all of the dishes were very green, they tasted extraordinarily good. What a delicious aroma! A pleased smile appeared on Su Xiaolan's face upon seeing Lin's elated expression before digging in with Lin. The bloodlines of the 6 vermilion bird sages are recovering very quickly. They should be able to return to their peak power in a few days, Su Xiaolan said as she ate. That's good. We'll be able to improve our core combat power once again. And Lin nodded in response. The heavenly sea god of the West Sea has already appeared. So aren't you worried that the defenses over there are a little weaker? Su Xiaolan asked curiously. Everything is under control. Don't worry, there's a teleportation spell formation in Yutong City that leads directly to the immortal land above water. If something happens, we can teleport there immediately. And Lin smiled. Su Xiaolan nodded. That works too. The heavenly sea god isn't very aggressive at the moment, so the heaven-crushing sect should be able to target it as well. We don't have to worry about that. Is Lan Xiaoni beautiful? She is. Slap. Maiden Lan suddenly put down her chopsticks. But she's only ordinary beautiful, and she's far from being able to make me yearn for little Lan's appearance. And Lin ate a mouthful of the devil's heart, and his expression was calm as he remedied the situation in an extremely natural manner. Is that so? Lan Xiaoni is a stunning beauty of the West Sea. I heard from the people of the West Sea that you have a super good relationship with her. Teenage Xiaolan picked up her chopsticks and continued to slowly pick up more food. Not bad, buddy. And Lin ate a piece of green shadow tripe. The adolescent girl Lan was naive, lively, and adorable. Her feelings for Lin were also extremely passionate, but at the same time she had an unavoidable shortcoming, and that was that she was very jealous. And Lin had known about this a long time ago, and was as calm as an old dog. Every cultivator was a big eater, and they could quickly digest the dishes on the table. And Lin and Su Xiaolan finished the dishes on the table in just a few bites. Even though the table of green dishes appeared to be some sort of dark cuisine from the outside, and Lin could guarantee after eating that this was an extremely delicious meal. After eating, the two of them went to the Silver Moon River and rowed the boat while admiring the vibrant sea of flowers on both sides of the river. Thus, another wonderful and fulfilling day passed by. Early the next morning, and Lin sat down to meditate as usual. The door to his room was suddenly opened. A fragrant scent wafted toward him. Immediately afterward, he felt a warm sensation on his forehead. And Lin opened his eyes to discover a woman in a jade dress. Her features were as beautiful as a painting, and she had a faint smile on her face. Her facial features were so exquisite that they were unimaginably perfect, and the smile on her face had become a lot more mature. He was a little dumbstruck. The woman in front of him was not only extremely beautiful, but she also had an excellent figure. Her skin was white and tender, like a ripe peach that was at its most delicious moment, ready to be plucked at any time. 40-year-old Xiaolan, here's a good morning kiss for you. Su Xiaolan was a little shy, and she glanced at Lin with some annoyance. Why do you keep staring at my private parts? And Lin was stunned at first. And then he came to his senses and said with a shocked expression, 40-year-old? What 40-year-old? Didn't you say that you would return to your original appearance after a period of time? How come you've become more mature and developed than before? Su Xiaolan furrowed her brows in distress. I don't know either. Ever since I advanced to the immortal cultivation rank, my appearance has been fixed at 20 years old. No matter what, my appearance won't change. Who would have thought that I would look like this when I woke up today? She patted her chest that had become much larger and sighed. Sigh, I'm also very distressed. The corners of Lin's mouth twitched imperceptibly. She was distressed even though she had become bigger. If the legal loli knew about this, wouldn't she eat half to death? He then looked at the current Su Xiaolan. Her figure had become slightly more plump, and her entire body was releasing a mature and charming aura. It should be said that the current her was even more charming and gorgeous. This Xiaolan, I like it. And Lin felt very happy. Xiaolan, I'll return you a good morning kiss. And Lin, why are you so anxious? A beautiful morning began with a good morning kiss between lovers. It was like a little bird drinking the morning dew and tasting the sweet flower juice, making one forget to leave. The two of them kissed for a while before going to eat breakfast. Su Xiaolan liked to cook when she was free. This could be said to have developed into a hobby. Thinking about it seriously, she was actually led astray by Lin. And Lin had dragged her to the celestial court to cook to earn money. So Lin had successfully escaped. Su Xiaolan, on the other hand, was obsessed with cooking. Even though she was not short of money now and did not need to cook for the immortals of the celestial court, she still could not help but tinker with new dishes every day to cook for herself and those close to her. As time went on, not only did her cooking skills become more and more awesome, but her recipes also became more varied. Now, cooking had become an important part of her life, and Lin found that this was the best decision he had made back then. Because of him, there was now a beautiful wife who took the initiative to cook for him. Not only that, she made delicious food, but she also took pleasure in it. Wasn't this a super happy event? And Lin happily enjoyed Xiaolan's breakfast and welcomed the beautiful day ahead. After finishing their breakfast, the two of them went to inspect the defenses on the city wall to see if there were any flaws in the spell formation. After that, they continued to enjoy themselves around Yutong City with Xiaolan as if they were the happiest couple ever. Thus, a few days passed by in bliss. The heavenly sea god suddenly contacted Lin. And Lin, I've received some important information. The heavenly sea god was a little excited, and Lin's eyes lit up. Oh, what is it? Any information that could be considered important by a paramount heavenly god was definitely not some trivial matter. It could very well be information that could decide the course of the war. Chapter 1980. The heavenly sea god spoke in an indifferent voice. Do you know how the heavenly human tribe came to be? And Lin faltered slightly upon hearing this. There are eggs of different colors hanging from the divine trees, and the heavenly human tribe are hatched from these eggs. The heavenly sea god was astonished. You know about that? And Lin smiled. He had been to that special place and even seen the heavenly life goddess. So how could he not know about it? Who would have thought that you would know something? The heavenly sea god sighed with emotion. Don't think of me as an idiot. And Lin snapped. Have you already been to the heavenly human holy land? The heavenly sea god asked. And Lin thought for a moment. If the place you're talking about is filled with auspicious energy, vital energy, rivers, mountains of unfathomable heights, and divine trees hundreds of thousands of feet tall with pink leaves, then I think I've been to that place. That's the place where we nurture the heavenly human tribe. The heavenly sea god replied with excitement. So what does that have to do with the information you're going to tell me? And Lin asked, do you know how many heavenly human tribe soldiers there are? The heavenly sea god asked. And Lin thought to himself for a moment. If we're talking about the heavenly human tribe living beings alone, then the 3 heavenly gates should have around 100 million soldiers, right? The heavenly sea god nodded. The number of eggs in the heavenly human Holy Land that have yet to hatch is over 10 times that of the heavenly human tribe army. And Lin's heart jolted upon hearing this. There were that many. He seemed to have guessed what the heavenly sea god was going to say. The heavenly human tribe has a very short growth cycle. From the moment they hatch to the point where they're ready for battle, only 1 year is required. Imagine what would happen if all of the eggs hatched at the same time. The heavenly sea god asked, and Lin took a deep breath. A heavenly human tribe army of 1 billion? In all honesty, a heavenly human tribe army of 100 million was already extremely terrifying. Under normal circumstances, it was already comparable to the combined armies of several first-rate forces on the Tai Chu continent. If the heavenly human tribe army was 10 times that, then they would be completely crushed. Is it possible to hatch all of them? And Lin asked with a trembling voice. The heavenly sea god chuckled. Of course it's possible. Why do you think the heavenly gods didn't launch a large-scale attack back then? Avoiding backlash from the heavenly Tao was one of the reasons. And the other reason was that he didn't want to waste too much energy. He wanted to use the heavenly human tribe to whittle down the living beings of the Tai Chu continent. After all, the heavenly human tribe is created from the life essence of the entire realm of stars. Not only is it produced in a short period of time, but it's also of high quality and an endless supply. 1 billion is just the current number. In 100 years, even 10 billion won't be a problem. And Lin gulped. Could it be that the information you're talking about has something to do with the destruction of this heavenly human tribe Holy Land? No, you don't have the power to destroy the heavenly human Holy Land. In reality, there isn't enough time for them to create more heavenly human tribe armies. Nuwa's mending of the heavens has progressed to the 3rd stage, and not only am I unable to enter the Tai Chu continent, the heavenly human tribe is also unable to do so. Hence, the paramount heavenly gods moved 1 billion heavenly human tribe eggs to the Tai Chu continent. They planned to incubate them all at once before quickly ripening them so that they could form a heavenly human tribe army of 1 billion within a month. Light and Earth have just told me about this plan. And Lin's eyes lit up. So you know where to put the eggs. Do you want us to go and destroy those eggs? Where are the eggs? There should be a lot of soldiers guarding them, right? The heavenly sea god. Actually, those eggs are right here with me and Lin. They want my western heavenly gate to become a breeding ground for a heavenly human tribe army of 1 billion. After successfully nurturing them, the heavenly human tribe army will sweep through the entire Tai Chu continent, the heavenly sea god explained. And Lin's lips twitched upon hearing this. These 2 paramount heavenly gods must be blind to have left such an important item with the heavenly sea god. How could these eggs be placed in the heavenly sea god's hands? If these 1 billion heavenly human tribe living beings could listen to me, then this wouldn't be the case. However, I didn't participate in nurturing the heavenly human tribe, so my control over them is nowhere near as effective as light and life. If a conflict arises, they won't listen to me, so I have to get rid of them. The heavenly sea god spoke with a serious expression, and Lin was quite amused by this. The heavenly sea god had only just received news of this, and he was already plotting within Lin on how to deal with these 1 billion eggs. If the 2 paramount heavenly gods knew about this, they would be enraged. This was the heavenly human tribe's most secretive and terrifying power, and it had to be eliminated while it was still in its infancy. Otherwise, even if Lin and the heavenly sea god were to successfully launch a sneak attack on the kingdom of the 9 States United Army, they would still suffer extremely heavy casualties. The only difficult part for us now is how to create a coincidence so that you can accidentally destroy the heavenly human tribe, heavenly god egg here. The entire process has to be logical and natural in order to avoid arousing suspicion from light and earth. The heavenly sea god said, That was indeed a difficult part. Where are the 1 billion eggs at the western heavenly gate? And Lin asked, About 10,000 kilometers northeast of the western heavenly gate, on a massive island with abundant vital energy. I've also set up a paramount nomological formation to protect it, the heavenly sea god replied. And Lin almost threw up a mouthful of blood upon hearing this. Are you proud of setting up such a F***king bad *SS formation? Can't you lower the difficulty a little? The 1 billion heavenly human tribe eggs are an extremely important part of our strategy. How am I supposed to lower the difficulty? How am I supposed to lower the difficulty? A conflicted expression appeared on the heavenly sea god's face. And Lin, on one hand, he wanted him to wreak havoc. On the other hand, he wanted to elevate the defenses there to the highest level. Wasn't this asking for too much? And Lin's brows furrowed tightly as he fell into deep thought. After a short while, his eyes lit up. I have a plan. You've thought of it already? The heavenly sea god was still racking his brains to no avail, and he faltered slightly upon hearing Lin's words. Is this a good idea? I don't want to give myself away so quickly. The heavenly sea god was a little skeptical. And Lin, let me finish first. The heavenly sea god nodded. All right. And Lin, like this, like this, like this, like this. The heavenly sea god paused for a moment before his eyes also lit up. However, he was still a little hesitant. That isn't very appropriate. You can't catch the wolf without risking the child. And Lin spoke with a solemn expression. That's even more inappropriate. You're selling my child. The heavenly sea god was a little gloomy. For the sake of our grand cause, for the sake of your dream, you can't even bear to make such a small loss? And Lin was exasperated. The heavenly sea god took a deep breath and made up his mind. All right, I'll do it. Chapter 1981. And Lin and the heavenly sea god chatted for a while longer before cutting off the connection. A grand plan had already begun, and Lin returned to his normal life and waited for the wind to blow again. Yu Tong Divine City was once again filled with the sight of two immortal couples enjoying their meals. In the eastern region of the Tai Chu continent, an earth-shattering battle erupted on the eastern border of the Kingdom of the 9 States. Over 100 million heavenly human tribe united army attacked Jinshi City. Tens of millions of soldiers from the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army were also fighting back with all their might. On the eastern side of Dawn City, the sounds of battle cries, and the collision of spell techniques rang out incessantly. All of these explosions were filled with destructive power, and it was as if heaven and earth were about to be torn asunder. On the massive city wall of Chunshi City, over 1,000 ionic collapse cannons rumbled incessantly. Each and every cannon blast would cause the space around the target to cave in and tear all of the heavenly human tribe living beings to shreds. This was a massive slaughter machine that had already slain hundreds of thousands of heavenly human tribe living beings. It was the work of the 4-9 immortal sect's Purple Star Pavilion. Aside from that, there were also 10 void cannons on the city wall that could shoot black particles. Each and every one of them was like a black streak of light that pierced through the air, reducing all living beings in its path to the tiniest of particles. These void cannons were extremely fearsome, and even Heaven Pioneer stage great generals would be severely wounded or killed by them. There was also a blue ball-shaped cannon. This cannon was not an offensive cannon. Instead, it was a defensive cannon that could annihilate all living beings within a kilometer radius of Chunshi City with super-dimensional energy. Not only was it extremely fast, but it also had the power of karma imbued within its core. These cannons were all advanced technology from the 4-9 Immortal Sect, and countless powerful beings on the battlefield were astonished by them. They had transformed a battle between ancient cultivators into a battle between cultivators from science fiction. The disciples of the 4-9 Immortal Sect's Purple Star Pavilion were constantly firing cannons. At most, they would have a protective cannon. As for the disciples of the other pavilions of the 4-9 Immortal Sect, All of them were equipped with high-tech exoskeletons. Not only were these exoskeletons extremely powerful, but they could also fly through the air, unleash spell techniques, and use energy amplification devices. All of them were far more powerful than they should be, making them appear as if they were warriors from the future. All of the cultivators from the other sects were extremely envious upon seeing this. They also wanted this high-tech exoskeleton. If it weren't for the fact that these things were so expensive that they couldn't be mass-produced, they would definitely buy a batch. The other pavilions of the 4-9 Immortal sect also performed extremely well. All members of the Blood Pavilion were at the Return to Void stage, and there were more than a dozen Return to Void stage mighty figures among them. Wherever they went, it was as if they had been plunged into a crimson hell, and they were able to extract all of the heavenly human tribe's blood from their bodies. Although the Snow Maidens of the Snow Maiden Pavilion were extremely beautiful, they were extremely vicious and cruel. The battlefield they were in was covered in ice and snow, and extreme cold was taking their lives. Not long after the battle began, over 1 million heavenly human tribe powerful beings had already been turned into exquisite ice sculptures. What a beautiful work of art, to freeze the most beautiful appearance, to leave the most beautiful state in this instant, is fate, and also the true meaning of life. This is the true art. The Snow Empress stroked the ice sculpture of a female great general of the heavenly human tribe. The female great general was still in the stance of drawing her sword when she was instantly frozen to death. Inside the ice cube, her beautiful face was frozen, but her sharp and resolute eyes were still there, like the most perfect sculpture. Shangguan Yi turned to look at the Snow Empress with a resigned expression. She really didn't dare to compliment the Empress's bad taste. After killing the enemy, she still wanted to admire and praise them. What kind of hobby was that? The Snow Maidens were extremely powerful. They had 2 Dao integration stage super mighty figures, a dozen or so return to void stage super mighty figures, and an army of over 10 million Snow Maidens. If one didn't know better, they would have thought that some first-rate power had participated in this battle. However, they were only a branch of the 4-9 Immortal sect. The Sword Pavilion and Dragon Pavilion were also extremely powerful. The Sword Pavilion Starfire battleship spanned for over 150 kilometers, and countless cannon blasts rained down upon the heavenly human tribe army. In terms of combat prowess, it was only comparable to a Dao integration stage super mighty figure. However, after being upgraded by Bai Ling, the Starfire battleship slaughter and annihilation abilities had far exceeded that of a Dao integration stage super mighty figure. The relentless cannon blasts were a testament to this. It didn't even have time to breathe. If any Dao integration stage super mighty figure were to try this, there was no way they would be able to keep firing. The 2 Dao integration stage true dragons of the Dragon Pavilion were even more fearless on the battlefield. They charged headlong into the enemy's territory and slaughtered their way through the battlefield. One of them had invincible defenses, while the other wasn't afraid of death. The heavenly human tribe army was on the brink of collapse. This wasn't a battle. This was a battle of attrition. In terms of ferocity, even the 5 emperors of the Celestial Court couldn't compare to these 2 true dragons. They were fighting with everything they had. It couldn't be helped that they had more lives than they had to. Apparently, Shao too had even gone to the eastern heavenly gate once. He had faced off against several heavenly gods and the heavenly light goddess, but he still hadn't died. This was massive news that had rocked the entire Tai Chu continent. The 4-9 Immortal sect's performance on the Eastern Front was comparable to that of the Celestial Court. Furthermore, the 4-9 Immortal sect was even more invincible on the Central Front. They had 9 Vermilion Birds, sect leader Lin, and acting sect leader Su Xiaolan. It could be said that they were invincible. On a certain battlefield, a man with a buzz cut and wearing a suit of dragon crystal armor swept through the battlefield with a spear in his hand. His spear techniques were extremely exquisite, and there was terrifying lightning revolving around his body, making him appear as if he were a massive dragon that was wreaking havoc on the battlefield. This man was none other than Wang Xuanzhan, who had interacted with Enlin on many occasions. He was once #1 on the United Immortal Rankings board, and after 100 years of cultivation, he was now a ferocious general of the Celestial Court. His cultivation base had also reached the return to void stage, and it could be said that he was a supremely talented prodigy. However, he didn't have the right to be proud, nor did he have the right to be proud. There was nothing he could do about it. His juniors were countless times more bad * possessed than he was. Wang Xuanzhan cultivated in the Tao of the battlefield, and he was extremely powerful on the battlefield. Every sweep and slash of his spear was imbued with mountainous power that far exceeded that of normal celestial immortals. Before he knew it, he had already killed over 100,000 enemies. It was exactly because of his ferocious performance that he attracted the attention of the heavenly human tribe great general. Boom! A terrifying pressure descended upon the area. A heaven pioneer stage, heavenly human tribe, mighty figure suddenly appeared before Wang Xuanzhan before unleashing a palm strike. Wang Xuanzhan reacted extremely quickly, and he let loose an enraged roar as lightning crackled on the tip of his spear. Roar! A dragon's roar erupted. Lightning exploded. Wang Xuanzhan felt an irresistible force emanating from his spear, which extended to his arm, tearing it apart and sending blood gushing forth. PFFF! Wang Xuanzhan threw up a mouthful of blood and flew back with severe injuries. Heaven Pioneer stage cultivators were known to be invincible below the Tao integration stage, and this was no exaggeration. He was only a celestial immortal who had just progressed to the return to void intermediate stage, so he was no match for them. An extremely handsome man bathed in the holy light of the heavens quickly approached Wang Xuanzhan before spreading open his snowy white wings and looking down at him from above. His palms began to expand in size as terrifying energy fluctuations emanated from them. Dragon General of the Celestial Court, Wang Xuanzhan, your end is here. The heavenly human tribe great general spoke in a cold voice as his palms crashed toward Wang Xuanzhan. In this dire situation, Wang Xuanzhan gritted his teeth and was just about to fight to the death when a small red flower suddenly appeared on his head, swaying in the wind. Chapter 1982. Wang Xuanzhan was given a fright. Why was there a flower growing on his head? However, he knew that he was in a perilous situation, so he didn't have time to think as he stabbed his sword toward the enemy before him. All of a sudden, a dazzling golden light erupted from the little red flower on his head. The golden light was extremely pure, to the point where Wang Xuanzhan couldn't detect any energy fluctuations. It's over. Golden light exploded from my head. Wang Xuanzhan felt like he was in a tragic situation. He had most likely been struck by some strange spell technique. Who would have thought that he would die in such an inexplicable way instead of dying a heroic death in battle? Just as he was thinking this, a beam of golden light suddenly shot forth from the golden flower on his head, piercing through the heavenly human tribe great general's head at an extremely fast speed. It was so fast that the great general didn't even have time to react. Before the great general's palms had even landed, his body suddenly faltered. Then his eyes glazed over as a look of enlightenment appeared on his face. Thump! The heavenly human tribe great general knelt down with tears streaming down his face. I've made a mistake. I'm filthy and filthy. I beg of you, please kill me. Wang Xuanzhan was just about to retaliate with his dragon-patterned spear when he was dumbstruck upon seeing this. What the hell? The mighty heavenly human tribe great general was kneeling down to him and begging to be killed? He didn't recall sending any money to him, so why was he suddenly delivering his head to him? At this moment, a sweet voice sounded from above his head. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and purify the repentant enemy before you. Praise the sun. The heavenly human tribe great general raised his hands high into the air. Turn your heart toward the light. Praise the sun. Splat! Wang Xuanzhan's spear fell, and he cleanly sliced the great general in half before adding expressionlessly, "Praise the sun!" Never would he have thought that the most powerful enemy he had ever killed would be defeated in such a manner. "Thank you for your assistance, Elder Xiaohong," Wang Xuanzhan said in a respectful voice. He didn't know what the little red flower on his head was, but he came to a sudden realization when he heard Xiaohong say, "Praise the sun." Who in the kingdom of the 9 states didn't know that Elder Xiaohong was a salted fish who sunbathed every day? No, it wasn't salted fish, it was a koi. It was nothing. "All right, keep up the good work, Mr. Wang Xuanzhan. I'm off to save the others," Xiaohong replied sweetly. Then her body suddenly disappeared. Wang Xuanzhan didn't know how Xiaohong had come, nor did he know how Xiaohong had left, nor did he know how Xiaohong had managed to make a heavenly human tribe, Great General Neil. That was a heaven pioneer, stage, heavenly human. As long as the heavenly gods didn't appear, they were the strongest. Their belief in the heavenly Tao and their use of the power of heaven were absolutely superb existences. Such existences were extremely proud, and their Tao hearts were extremely firm. How could they possibly kneel here and let him kill them? Not even the 5 emperors of the celestial court could do this. The meaning behind it made him feel terrified when he thought about it. What kind of freaks are the 4-9 immortal sect powerful beings? Wang Xuanzhan sighed with emotion. Come to think of it, this little red flower seemed to be in Lin's pet beast. Were all pet beasts this amazing? Wang Xuanzhan turned to look at Debai's dog in the distance. His current combat prowess was roughly equivalent to that of Debai. What a painful realization. Never would Wang Xuanzhan have thought that over 100 years later, he, the #1 prodigy on the immortal rankings board, would only be as powerful as a dog that Lin had ridden. This was simply too surreal. Debai must have received a lot of immortal opportunities, right? He really wanted to follow in Lin. What could he do? Wang Xuanzhan shook his head vigorously to rid himself of these distracting thoughts before charging toward the heavenly human tribe, powerful beings. The battle was still raging. Perhaps this was due to the fact that the heavenly human tribe had been defeated on the Central Front. There were no heavenly gods in this battle. There were only over 100 million heavenly human tribe, powerful beings. However, the kingdom of the 9 States United Army was extremely ferocious and had slain more enemies than the heavenly human tribe, powerful beings. When they had suffered 3 to 4 million casualties, the heavenly human tribe had already suffered close to 10 million casualties. The massive increase in morale was one of the reasons for this, but the 4-9 immortal sect was also another reason. Everyone was quite elated. If this battle continued, the heavenly human tribe would eventually run out of soldiers. The Eastern Front was still embroiled in a massive battle. The Central Front was still as peaceful as ever. And Lin and Su Xiaolan were still preparing for battle and living a leisurely life. Yutong City was a massive city, and there were far too many things to experience here. There was food, drink, and entertainment, and all of these activities were unique to the various tribes. The Lightwing clan, the True Demon tribe, the Buddhist tribe, and even the West Sea Monster tribe and the Holy Martial clan all had their own unique activities. And Lin held Xiaolan's hand as they traversed through the streets and alleys in an extremely joyful manner. The next morning, the first rays of the morning sun appeared in the east. The cry of the vermilion bird reverberated throughout Yutong City. A new day had begun, and Lin was meditating on his bed. However, the familiar sound of a door being pushed open did not sound for a long time. He was a little confused. In the past, Xiaolan had always been the one to wake him up. After tidying himself up, and Lin made his way toward Su Xiaolan's room. He had only just arrived at the door when a voice sounded from within. "Don't come in." The voice was a little familiar, and it was slightly hoarse. And Lin's heart jolted as a sense of foreboding welled up in his heart. He immediately pushed open the door. only to discover that there was a powerful restriction that isolated the surrounding space. "Don't come in. Please, I beg of you," a hoarse, pleading voice sounded from within the door. A white light flashed past in Lynn's eyes. Divine inspection technique. What a joke. "Do you think I won't come in just because you say so? I'm going to meditate in this room." And Lynn flicked a finger toward an obvious flaw in the restriction, and the restriction instantly shattered. He immediately pushed open the door, upon which a female's cry of surprise erupted. A figure in a jade dress had her back to him, and she had her hands tightly clasped over her face with a sobbing voice. "Didn't I tell you not to come in? Why didn't you listen to me? I really didn't want you to see me like this." And Lynn faltered upon hearing this. He looked at the thin and frail figure before him. The jade dress was still the same as yesterday, but the body beneath the dress was so frail and frail. Her hair was gray, and her neck was wrinkled. Her hands, which were exposed beneath the dress, had lost their luster and were instead a little sagged. And Lynn walked over to the side of the bed and sat down across from the woman in the jade dress. His heart throbbed with pain as he looked at the woman in the jade dress who had turned her head away with her hands covering her face. He stretched out a hand and forcefully pried the woman's hands away from her face. And Lynn saw Su Xiaolan's appearance. She still had an oval face, but her face was full of wrinkles and age spots. Her snowy white cheeks were gone, her seductive lips were gone, her exquisite nose was gone, and her bright eyes were gone. In their place was a saggy and wrinkled face, shriveled lips, a shriveled nose, and a pair of dull and lifeless eyes. Su Xiaolan's eyes were red, and she finally mustered the courage to look Lynn in the eyes. Her voice trembled as she said, "Do you see my face? Are you satisfied now? Get out, get the hell out of here. I'll be fine in a few days. Just a few days, and I won't look like this. Can't you wait? Why do you have to?" Suddenly, a warm and soft sensation came from her forehead. Su Xiaolan stopped talking and opened her mouth. She stared blankly at the man who was leaning forward, feeling the warmth and softness on her forehead. 10 seconds later, and Lynn took a step back and looked at the wrinkled Su Xiaolan before him with a warm smile. "Here's a good morning kiss for you. Good morning to the 80-year-old Xiaolan." Chapter 1983. A kiss. A smile. It was as if the morning sun had pierced through the night sky. The pain and gloom in the woman's heart were all dispelled. Su Xiaolan stared blankly at the man before her, and she could no longer hold back her tears. She threw herself into Lynn's arms and burst into tears. "How did I become like this? How did I become like this? I'm so ugly. How am I going to face people in the future?" "Wah!" Su Xiaolan grabbed onto Lynn's clothes and burst into tears. She wasn't sad when she became a baby, nor was she sad when she became a lowly. She wasn't sad when she became a teenager or a middle-aged woman, because she was still very beautiful at that time. But now, she had become an 80-year-old woman, and she almost broke down when she looked into the mirror. Although for cultivators, looks were just skin bags, they were just skin bags. But could they really get over it? This was a world where looks mattered. Beauty was something that billions of people yearned for. So how could they ignore it? Su Xiaolan said she didn't care about her looks because she was already very beautiful. No matter how she changed, she would only become more and more beautiful. So of course she didn't care about it. After all, she wasn't called the Holy Maiden or Goddess for nothing. However, when she discovered that she had turned into a white-haired old woman, and her beautiful face had turned into a bark-like appearance, she, who had always been accustomed to being a fairy, suffered a huge blow. It was easy to imagine, and Lynn hugged the trembling and sobbing woman in his arms tightly, and his heart ached for her. He didn't want to make the woman in his arms sad, but he didn't know what else he could do. All he could do was hug her tightly and let her know that he would never leave her. The sun set in the west, and the setting sun melted gold. The passage of time was always accompanied by aging and separation, and Lynn couldn't decide who would age first, but he could decide to stay with Su Xiaolan forever during this period of time. He didn't say it out loud, but he knew that Su Xiaolan definitely knew that he had made his choice. Don't worry, Xiaolan, this should only be temporary. Even though you've aged, your life force hasn't weakened. This could be a side effect of inheriting the holy birth, but you'll recover very soon. And Lin finally thought of something to comfort her. But what should I do? I've aged so much and become so ugly. I really don't have the face to see anyone. Su Xiaolan's shriveled body lay in Lin's arms, still murmuring in pain. And Lin's eyes lit up. Who do you think is uglier, the clown or you? Su Xiaolan's body trembled, and her eyes reddened as she said angrily, I may be old, 80 years old, but how can you insult me? And Lin smiled and said, that's right. The clown is so ugly, but he still has the face to meet people. Why can't you? Xiao Chou is so ugly, yet he's willing to marry a supremely beautiful woman like Baiyao. Why are you so flustered? Su Xiaolan's mouth gaped open, but she was completely speechless. Xiao Chou's outrageously ugly features appeared in her mind. Thinking about it that way, the grief and pain in her heart seemed to have been alleviated significantly. In fact, she felt much better. Achoo! On the Eastern Front, the clown was engaged in an intense battle when he suddenly sneezed and looked around with a perplexed expression. Could it be that someone was cursing at him? Die, ugly monkey! In the distance, a few soul-piercing stage, heavenly human tribe generals pounced toward the black, crystalline, armored monkey with rage. The clown glowered at the soul-piercing stage, heavenly gods, and boundless scintillating light burst forth from his bulb-like eyes. The soul-piercing stage generals felt as if they were pouncing toward two suns. It was too dazzling. Bam, bam, bam. The clown swung his staff through the air toward the heavenly human tribe generals, who had been blinded by his bulb-like eyes, and one general after another fell amid blood-curdling cries. Die, stupid monkey! Behind the clown, a heavenly human tribe general enshrouded in darkness suddenly stabbed toward the clown's neck. The general's eyes were obscured by the shadows, so he wasn't blinded, and he didn't call the clown an ugly monkey. Instead, he took this opportunity to kill the clown in one fell swoop. The black spear tore through the air like a bolt of lightning. The clown detected the attack behind him, but it was already too late. A triumphant expression appeared on the heavenly human tribe general's face. At this moment, countless tails suddenly obscured the sun in the sky. 6 snowy white fox tails came crashing down upon the general like massive palms. You dare to touch my little monkey? Die! A clear cry erupted from the sky. Boom! The tails were extremely heavy. The heavenly human tribe general let loose a wail of anguish as he crashed into the ground, creating a massive crater. The clown turned around with an ugly smile on his face. Can't you see that there are 2 of us? The heavenly human tribe general's face was filled with rage and indignation at the sight of the exquisitely beautiful woman clinging to the clown in an obedient manner. He was just about to say something when a massive black staff came crashing down mercilessly on his head. Bam! The heavenly human tribe general had fallen, the clown, and Baiyao left hand in hand. In the distance, Dabai was just about to help the clown when he swallowed a mouthful of Dabai food before charging toward the other heavenly human tribe powerful beings. This was a massive battle, and both sides were fighting with all their might. 20 million heavenly human tribe powerful beings had been killed, and only then did they begin to retreat. At this moment, their numbers had already been reduced to 90 million, which was the same number as the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army. However, the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army had previously numbered 100 million. This meant that the heavenly human tribe had suffered twice as many casualties as the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army. One had to realize that all of the heavenly human tribe powerful beings were extremely powerful. On average, they were on a higher level than the living beings on the Tai Chu continent, but the outcome of the battle was vastly different. This was absolutely unimaginable. Long Outyen looked at the kingdom of the 9 States United Army, and he suddenly realized just how powerful the heavenly human tribe was. An army that had experienced despair and then boundless hope was on a completely different level compared to a normal army. The kingdom of the 9 States United Army chased them for over 1,500 kilometers. Only when 3 heavenly gods with divine halos above their heads appeared among the heavenly human tribe United Army did the kingdom of the 9 States United Army stop in their tracks. The Celestial Arch and the ancient Dragon Empress stood at the forefront of the kingdom of the 9 States United Army, facing off against the heavenly gods without any fear. They were the most powerful beings on the eastern front of the kingdom of the 9 States United Army, and all of them were extremely proficient in heaven-crushing techniques. As such, they possessed powers that rivaled heavenly gods. The Celestial Arch and the ancient Dragon Empress could continue fighting, but they had no intention of continuing the battle now that the kingdom of the 9 States United Army had achieved so much. Charge! Ha ha ha! F***CK them all up! At this moment, an earth-shattering roar erupted. 2 black dragons that blotted out the sky actually pounced brainlessly towards the 3 heavenly gods not far away. All of the kingdom of the 9 States United Army and the heavenly human tribe United Army's expressions shifted at the same time. Chapter 1984. The 80 million strong heavenly human tribe United Army and the 90 million strong kingdom of the 9 States United Army were already locked in a stalemate. Barring any mishaps, both sides were about to retreat. However, the 2 powerful black dragons pounced on the 3 heavenly gods without a care, looking as if they were going to kill the heavenly gods. The kingdom of the 9 States United Army was astonished, as was the heavenly human tribe United Army. Had these 2 true dragons gone F***king insane? The heavenly gods were not just any ordinary beings. They were beings who had mastered the paramount laws of the heavenly Tao. Even if the true dragons were Tao integration stage, super mighty figures, they would still be insta-killed if they didn't possess heavenly disciple level combat prowess. However, some of the powerful beings of the kingdom of the 9 States United Army were quickly relieved after seeing who the 2 true dragons were. These were the 249 immortal sect super mighty figures who were not afraid of death. Xiao Zhe and Xiao Tu. Eat this. Divine Dragon Tail Whip. Xiao Zhe abruptly swung his tail toward a lark with white smoke billowing from the divine halo above its head. The lark crossed its arms to form a shield to take the attack head-on, but its body didn't budge in the slightest. However, Xiao Zhe's body was knocked flying by the terrifying recoil. Heaven-crushing dragon breath. Howl! Xiao Tu opened his mouth and blasted a destructive dragon's breath toward the heavenly god in the distance. The kami, who was shrouded in shadows, suddenly stretched out a withered gray palm and lightly blocked the breath in front of him. Invisible ripples spread out, and the terrifying energy of the breath quickly dissipated in front of its eyes, as if it had fallen and diminished. It became smaller and smaller, and the level of the energy became lower and lower. When it was about to touch its body, it had already turned into a light breeze, and it did not hurt or itch. All of the kingdom of the 9 States United Army were astonished upon seeing this. Even though Xiao Tu didn't possess heavenly disciple-level combat prowess, he was still a Tao integration stage, primordial dragon tribe mighty figure. How could his full-force attack be nullified so easily by a heavenly god? Celestial Arch, do we need to go and help? The ancient Dragon Empress asked with a speechless expression. The Celestial Arch massaged his brows. He didn't know what to do. Let's wait for a while. Let those 2 dragons have their fun first. His voice had only just faded. Xiaozi let out a loud roar and actually started to pounce toward the heavenly god who was shrouded in darkness. Xiao Tu flew toward the lark. The 2 of them switched opponents tacitly. Xiaozi directly charged towards the heavenly god shrouded in shadows, and used the dragon clan's most commonly used charge attack. The heavenly god waved a hand, and the dark mist surged toward Xiaoza like a tornado. 10,000 mammoth dragons! Xiaoza's entire body was suddenly covered in a layer of ever-changing crystalline armor, which was capable of unleashing different defensive measures against different types of energy. Puff, puff, puff! The dark mist shrouded his body, causing his crystal armor to crack and wither. He had also analyzed his opponent's ability in an instant. Degradation, degeneration, degeneration. It could degenerate all living things. Dragons degenerated into flood dragons, humans degenerated into gorillas, and phoenixes degenerated into pheasants. It could even degenerate life into stem cells. Xiaoza's expression turned cold. Isn't this attack a little too terrifying? He immediately made the correct decision. He gave up on expending his energy to upgrade his defenses and charged forward instead, swinging his tail toward the heavenly god in front of him. The crystal armor quickly melted away, but before the black mist could touch his dragon scales, the tail had already smashed heavily into the heavenly god's body, who was shrouded in darkness. Bam! A gargantuan thump erupted. The black figure plummeted from the sky and smashed a massive crater into the ground. Countless people's eyes widened with astonishment. Xiaoza had just swatted a heavenly god flying. At this moment, Xiao Tu also pounced toward the nearby lark. Learning from Xiaoza's lesson, Xiao Tu didn't use any physical attacks this time. Instead, he opened his cavernous mouth. What is he trying to do? No way! Everyone's eyes widened as they watched the black dragon swallow the lark-like heavenly god in an extremely violent manner. Then it shut its mouth. All of the onlookers drew a sharp intake of breath. Xiao Tu really was quite daring. One had to realize that this was no ordinary bird. This was an extremely powerful heavenly god. Wasn't he afraid that it would wreak havoc in his stomach? Wasn't he afraid that it would detonate his body? Did he really think his body could slowly digest a heavenly god? It had to be said that Xiao Tu really was insane. Did he have a death wish? Wait, it seemed like he really did have the right to do so. Ha ha ha! You won't be able to escape now that you've entered my stomach. Have a taste of my infernal dragon grindstone. Xiao Tu chortled with glee as terrifying energy exploded within his body. Awesome! Xiaoza chortled with glee as he also pounced toward the heavenly god on the ground. Right at this moment, a speck of light that no one was paying attention to suddenly flashed. All of a sudden, all of the living beings present felt as if a boundless light was trying to pierce through their eyes, and everything before their eyes turned white. Ah! Countless living beings howled with anguish, and some of them were even shedding tears of blood. The light was so bright that it even stripped away all of the living being senses. The celestial arch and the ancient dragon empress expressions both shifted drastically. They knew that this light was targeted at Xiaoza and Xiao Tu, as they were the two true dragons. Sure enough, Xiaoza and Xiao Tu let loose panicked roars. The light disappeared just as quickly as it came. However, the light had only just disappeared when the celestial arch and the ancient dragon empress were greeted by the sight of an extremely beautiful heavenly goddess who was holding a massive pink folding fan. Piss off! The heavenly goddess harumphed. How? Xiaoza was caught off guard and was knocked flying for over 500 kilometers before being pushed back by a burst of terrifying wind power. Xiao Tu was in an even more miserable state. His body was extremely hot and red. Ah, I've become more powerful. I've become more powerful. Xiao Tu writhed frantically as he spoke in a language that no one could understand. Immediately afterward, his dragon scales began to fall off. How are you still alive? The heavenly god wielding the massive golden saber had already appeared on Xiao Tu's back, and a series of terrifying saber projections instantly sliced Xiao Tu's body in half. How? Xiao Tu let loose a blood-curdling wail as a piercing light erupted from his sliced body. The ancient Dragon Empress and the Celestial Arch had initially wanted to rush over to help, but their expressions shifted drastically upon seeing this, and they immediately unleashed a powerful barrier around the army of tens of millions. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion suddenly took place. Golden energy engulfed and destroyed everything around it in a frenzy. Xiao Tu's body had exploded. All of the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army soldiers were grief-stricken. Their most powerful being, Xiao Tu, had died again. Why again? It couldn't be said that Xiao Tu and Xiao Zhe had been completely useless during the mudslide on the battlefield. At the very least, they had drawn out another 2 heavenly gods. Chapter 1985. The Celestial Arch and the ancient Dragon Empress unleashed their most powerful defenses to keep the shockwaves of Xiao Tu's explosion at bay. The heavenly human tribe seemed to be prepared, and they instantly constructed an invisible barrier to keep the shockwaves at bay. After the explosion, Xiao Tu's body had been reduced to an extremely sorry state. Xiao Zhe was in a slightly better state. He had the most powerful defensive ability among all Dao integration stage super mighty figures, and he was only knocked a little far away by the massive fan-wielding heavenly goddess, but he didn't suffer any serious injuries. However, the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army was becoming quite nervous as 5 heavenly gods had appeared. There was a heavenly god enshrouded in darkness, a heavenly god in the form of a lark, a heavenly god in the form of a speck of light, a heavenly goddess wielding a massive pink fan, and a male heavenly god wielding a massive golden saber. In the past, they had been evenly matched. Now, however, 2 more heavenly gods had appeared, and everyone's flesh crawled with fear. The balance of power had been completely skewed, so it was not impossible for the heavenly human tribe to retaliate. That annoying **starred has finally pissed off. A beautiful female heavenly goddess sat on the hovering folding fan, and a faint smile appeared on her face as she looked at Xiaoza, who had transformed into a black in the distance. "Linghua, you should have killed him," said the Empyrean god with the huge tyrant blade. Ling Hua shot a cold glance at the male heavenly god. "That's easy for you to say. Do you think you can kill that dragon without activating your 9-god halo?" The male heavenly god's lips twitched. Would it kill him to flex with me? At this moment, the lark flew in the air and looked down at the army of 10 million soldiers. A clear voice that was like the chirping of a bird reverberated through the world. "Do you still want to continue fighting? If you do, we're more than happy to oblige." Her words had clearly given the Celestial Arch and the others a choice. They could choose not to fight. Kingdom of the 9 States, United Army, retreat. The Celestial Thearch's voice spread throughout the entire battlefield. The Kingdom of the 9 States United Army was relieved to hear this, but they were also a little disappointed. It looked like the final battle was yet to come. The heavenly human tribe army of 90 million retreated in an orderly manner. The heavenly human tribe united army looked on expressionlessly, as if they were watching the heavenly human tribe army depart. Only the lark looked at a certain direction in the distance with a fearful expression. At this moment, Eastern Heaven Gate, in a sea of light, the female being formed from countless particles of light, spoke to a piece of soil in her hand. "What's the situation at the central heavenly gate?" "I've run into some trouble, and Lin really is a wild card. Aside from that, the Divine Phoenix Maiden has also become an important obstacle, so I won't be able to proceed with my plan for now." The heavenly earth god's voice sounded from within the soil. The woman was silent for a while before she said, "Our plan cannot be changed. If necessary, we can take action to suppress the 2 of them. It's fine as long as you know the severity." "That's easy for you to say. He's becoming more powerful far too quickly. I wonder what he'll be like in a real battle." The heavenly earth god sighed in a resigned voice. "With the help of the heavenly sea god, do you think you can't suppress the 2 of them?" The woman chuckled. "He's still recovering from his injuries," the heavenly earth god replied. "Then after he recovers from his injuries, You can join forces with him to suppress Enlil and kill the divine Phoenix Maiden," the woman said in a nonchalant manner. In her eyes, Enlil and Su Xiaolan were indeed wild cards, but they weren't enough to pose a threat to their plan. At most, they would be a little troublesome to deal with. "How is your plan progressing?" the heavenly earth god asked. "Very smoothly." A carefree smile appeared on the woman's face at the mention of this. "We used 20 million heavenly human tribe powerful beings to whittle down 10 million kingdom of the 9 states united army. What a pitiful and laughable bunch of humans. The heavenly human tribe is nothing more than a tool in our eyes. If they knew that there were still a billion heavenly human tribe powerful beings waiting for them in the West Sea, I wonder what they would think." The heavenly earth god was very pleased. "We've whittled down the kingdom of the 9 states united army. All we have to do is hold off the 2 most powerful beings of the heaven-crushing sect, and we'll be able to completely eradicate the human race. That billion heavenly human tribe powerful being is our trump card." "We can't expose that," the woman cautioned. "Don't worry. Don't underestimate the heavenly sea god. He's very powerful." The heavenly earth god was not concerned. At Yutong City, Enlil received a report from the kingdom of the 9 states united army on the Eastern Front. The celestial arch was elated as he recounted the glorious feats on the Eastern Front. However, a peculiar expression appeared on Enlin's face upon reading this report. He seemed to have guessed what their enemies were trying to do. When the kingdom of the 9 states united army only had half of its forces left, a billion heavenly human tribe united army suddenly appeared from the west. Were you surprised or not? This was not a bad plan, but they didn't think that their allies would want to become the heavenly Tao, and Lin couldn't help but burst into laughter with this in mind. "What's making you so happy?" Su Xiaolan carried a bowl of food to Enlin as she looked at him. She was currently wearing a little bear mask. There was no helping it. Although Enlin didn't mind her appearance, she still minded it a lot. She couldn't change her original appearance, so she could only wear a mask to hide it. What was worth celebrating was that even though Su Xiaolan had put on the mask, she had finally calmed down and accepted this reality. She was going to do what she had to do, and her hobby of cooking hadn't changed. And Lin savored the delicious dishes in front of him before handing the report to Su Xiaolan. Su Xiaolan was also elated after reading the report. 10 million casualties and over 20 million enemies killed? That's a good thing. No wonder you're smiling so happily. And Lin's lips twitched upon hearing this. He was smiling so happily only because he had seen through the heavenly human tribe scheme. Speaking of which, the heavenly sea god should be making his move soon, right? At this moment, on the western border of the Tai Chu continent, within a boundless ocean, countless sea monsters beat their war drums. Over 20 million sea monsters formed a formation in the ocean, unleashing an earth-shattering aura. Lan Xiaoni's fishtail was coiled up, and she was sitting on a huge, colorful bubble that hovered at the center of the formation. This was the first large-scale battle the heavenly sea god was engaged in against the West Sea heavenly human tribe, so she naturally had to lead the army in person. She could mobilize an army of over 40 million sea monsters, but this battle was only a test, so she didn't want to mobilize her entire army. Aside from the 20 million sea monsters, there were also 5 million Holy Martial clan and 5 million true demon tribe living beings, who were completely at Lan Xiaoni's beck and call. In the past, the West Sea Alliance had been guarding the western heavenly gate. Now that the heavenly sea god had appeared, all of the other powers on the Tai Chu continent were starting to panic. Even though the West Sea Alliance didn't request for reinforcements, they still sent their most powerful army to reinforce them. The West Sea Alliance was the most important stronghold on the Western Front, so they couldn't be allowed to fall. Lan Xiaoni looked at the heavenly human tribe united army in the distance, and a solemn expression appeared on her face as she waved a hand through the air. "West Sea Alliance Army, heed my command." Chapter 1986. The battle had begun. The West Sea Alliance consisted of 20 million sea monsters, 5 million true demon tribe cultivators, and 5 million holy martial clan cultivators. A terrifying wave of 30 million cultivators surged toward the heavenly human tribe cultivators, who only numbered 20 million. The celestial human tribe members flew through the air, unleashing one holy light attack after another. Pure white holy light continuously descended, illuminating the entire sky. Boom, boom, boom. The holy light shot into the ocean, causing the water to splash violently. The sea monsters approached through the seabed, but the heavenly human tribe's holy light was extremely penetrative, and it could easily pierce through the sea and the bodies of the sea monsters. One by one, the sea demons screamed miserably. Then they died and floated to the surface. This scene was like a fish being fried. Of course, the sea monsters were no pushovers either. Streaks of extremely concentrated water imbued with extremely high energy shot into the sky from the ocean, piercing through the bodies of the heavenly human tribe, powerful beings, one after another like sharp spears, inflicting severe injuries on them as they plummeted into the ocean. All of the heavenly human tribe cultivators who fell into the ocean, regardless of whether they were dead or severely wounded, were devoured by the piranhas without exception. These piranhas had no intelligence, and they didn't belong to Lan Xiaoni's army. However, there were hundreds of millions of them in the ocean, and their favorite food was the corpses of heavenly human tribe cultivators. The true demons also had black bat wings, and they rose into the air before unleashing a series of dark magic spells to clash with the heavenly human tribe powerful beings. Black and white energy rings intertwined in the air. Those who didn't know better would think it was an epic battle between an angel and a devil. The Holy Martial Clan was in an awkward situation. They didn't have wings and they couldn't swim, so they could only tread on the waves. Most of these 5 million Holy Martial Clan powerful beings were close-quarters combat powerful beings, and they could only run for their lives in the face of the concentrated holy light cannon fire. One by one, their brothers were smashed to death by the holy light as they ran. However, this did not make them afraid. Instead, it aroused their fighting spirit. The 5 million Holy Martial Clan cultivators suffered heavy casualties as they approached the Holy Martial Monarch, and they were almost smashed into the ground. But finally, they approached the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army. Bang, bang, bang! All of them stomped on the surface of the ocean, causing the surface of the ocean to cave in. Their bodies shot into the sky like rockets, and they unleashed their fists right before the shocked heavenly human tribe cultivators' eyes. Bang, bang, bang! The heavenly human tribe living beings didn't even get a chance to resist before their bodies were smashed into smithereens by the Holy Martial Clan powerful beings. The Holy Martial Clan was the tribe that was most proficient in combat, and their bodies were also the most heaven-defying. After the Holy Martial tribe drew closer to the heavenly human tribe, their casualties began to mount. That's right, the members of the Holy Martial Clan were being beaten up like cowards when they were running from a distance. However, once they got closer, they would beat them up like a coward. The heavenly human tribe great general was so frightened that he hurriedly began to issue commands. Spread out, quickly spread out. Raise the altitude. Stay away from the sea. The heavenly human tribe was caught off guard by this sudden attack, and they hurriedly changed their battle strategy. However, just as they thought they could widen the distance between them and launch a high-altitude attack, the sea suddenly roared. Then the seawater within a radius of several thousand miles soared into the sky and gathered in the center, forming a giant water net that kept pressing down. The Celestial Clan's army was shocked. How was this miraculous scene accomplished? Thousands of miles of seawater. Even a heavenly god wouldn't be able to do this. Long live Alliance, Leader Lan. Kill all of the heavenly humans. The West Sea Alliance United Army knew that this was the work of their alliance leader, and they became even more excited. All of the true demon tribe and Holy Martial Clan powerful beings turned toward the center of the battle formation, with a woman exuding a paramount aura and a divine halo above her head, were also struck by an indescribable sense of awe and veneration. This West Sea Alliance leader's performance was simply breathtaking. In fact, it was even comparable to a heavenly god's performance. It was also at this moment that an ethereal voice imbued with paramount might erupted throughout the sea. As expected, the power of the heavenly gods is very powerful. Everything that Mistress Ocean has done is correct. However, we still encountered a bit of a problem. We have to correct this misconception. In an instant, a strange light reflected in the sky and flashed by. The huge net of seawater that was pressing down from the sky stopped for a moment and showed signs of collapsing. At this moment, countless streaks of silvery gray liquid as sharp as blades fell from the sky, slicing the massive seawater net into pieces. A heavenly god appeared in the air above the heavenly human tribe united army, with a paramount, divine might exuding from its body. "We meet again, Alliance leader Lon." A faint smile appeared on Lon Xiaoni's face as she looked at the heavenly god in the distance. "Heavenly liquid god, last time you were defeated like a stray dog, running away faster than anyone else. This time, who gave you the courage to stand in front of me again?" This was none other than the heavenly liquid god that Lon Xiaoni had interacted with before. The heavenly liquid god's body trembled with rage upon hearing this. "Kukuku, if it weren't for your lover, we would have killed you long ago. It would have been fine if you hid in the immortal land above water. But who would have thought that you would dare to come out again? If we can kill you once, we can kill you twice." The heavenly god with a body that resembled an oval mirror screeched. It was none other than the heavenly mirror god of the Western Heavenly Gate. "Who would have thought that you too would come again? Are you here to help me warm up?" Lon Xiaoni flicked her tail and flew into the air. She spread open her arms, and the boundless West Sea began to roar and churn at the same time. This divine might struck fear into the hearts of both the heavenly human tribe and the spirit fish clan. The heavenly human tribe united army was wondering if they would be insta-killed by the spirit fish clan. The spirit fish clan allies were wondering if they would also be reduced to corpses by Alliance leader Lan's wrath. Even the heavenly liquid god and the heavenly mirror god wore grave expressions. After their last battle, Lon Xiaoni's control over the powers of the heavenly gods seemed to have improved significantly. Did living beings on the Tai Chu continent really suffer less from the heavenly Tao when using the powers of the heavenly gods? Before Nuwa mended the heavens, they were already a little inferior to Lon Xiaoni in a one-on-one battle. Now that Nuwa's mending of the heavens had progressed to the third stage, they were even more severely restricted, and Lon Xiaoni had become more powerful. As such, they were no match for Lon Xiaoni in a one-on-one battle. However, it wasn't as if they were unprepared. "Lanya, Ming-He, you can come out now," the heavenly mirror god suddenly said. Immediately afterward, seawater began to surge behind the West Sea Alliance army. A woman with a head of long, blue hair and snowy white skin emerged from the surface of the ocean. An inky black man with long, black hair and crimson eyes also emerged from the surface of the ocean. He was holding an inky black chain in his hands. As soon as they appeared, a terrifying heavenly god aura crushed down upon the West Sea Alliance's army without any reservation, striking all living beings with a sense of asphyxiation. "Crap, those are heavenly gods. They're divine, heaven stage, heavenly humans." The West Sea Alliance powerful beings' expressions shifted drastically. Lon Xiaoni couldn't even smile anymore. When did they get here? She could sense the entire ocean with her powers of the heavenly gods. So why couldn't she detect these two heavenly gods? Ha ha ha. Surprised, right? A smug smile appeared on the heavenly mirror god's face. "My mirrored flower, moon, reflection space can carry divine, heaven stage, heavenly humans, and allow them to jump out of any mirror nearby. Seawater is also a type of mirror, so the heavenly mirror god's smile gradually became cruel. "Lon Xiaoni, you've been surrounded by the four of us. Come, let's attack together, capture Lan Xiaoni alive, and offer her to the heavenly sea god. Chapter 1987. The sea demon's expressions changed drastically. Their leader Lan had been surrounded again. For such a delicate and beautiful young girl to suddenly be surrounded by four heavenly gods with ill intentions, anyone would be worried, even if this young girl had great power. You dare to attack me? Don't forget that I have people backing me up. Lan Xiaoni harumphed coldly as a frosty expression appeared on her face. Ha ha ha. Are you talking about your boss and Lin? A smug smile appeared on the heavenly mirror god's face, as if everything was under his control. The heavenly sea god has already activated the west sea canopy to isolate the teleportation spell formation. He can't use the teleportation spell formation to reinforce you, so he can only fly here. Do you think he'll be able to save you in time? How could this be? A dazed expression appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face, and her body swayed slightly. She was in disbelief. The heavenly sea god had mobilized himself to kill her? Weren't there rumors circulating in the outside world that the heavenly sea god couldn't participate due to special reasons? A seductive smile appeared on heavenly goddess Lan Ya's face. You should be proud that the heavenly sea god personally came to deal with you. Although the heavenly sea god paid a heavy price, it was all worth it in order for the heavenly god of water's power to develop further. Let's go. The heavenly mirror god roared as it pounced toward Lan Xiaoni. The heavenly liquid god, heavenly goddess Lanya, and heavenly god Ming River sprang into action at the same time before charging toward Lan Xiaoni. Protect Leader Lan. Protect Alliance Leader Lan with our lives. Gu Yu, Fei Yu, Lan Xingyang, and all the other Dao integration stage super mighty figures sprang into action. There's no need to protect me. All you have to do is defeat the enemies before you. Lan Xiaoni dove headfirst into the ocean and swam away from the army. She had already sent a message to Enlin. As long as she could stall for time, even if Enlin were to fly, he would be able to come here. She just had to stall for time. The ocean was her home ground. With a gentle flick of her tail, she could leap hundreds of miles away. Her speed was unbelievably fast. However, the other four heavenly gods were not to be trifled with. The divine halo above the heavenly mirror god's head lit up. True and false switch, illusionary mist mirror. Buzz, the energy instantly spread between heaven and earth. Lan Xiaoni was struck by the power of the explosion, and she completely lost her sense of direction in that instant. She felt as if she had been plunged into a boundless world of mirrors, and everything before her eyes was a repetitive reflection. Humph! You want to bewitch me with a mere mirror illusion? Lan Xiaoni harumphed coldly, and the seawater around her, which was imbued with the paramount power of laws, exploded violently. Boom! Kacha! The illusion shattered like a mirror falling onto the ground. Lan Xiaoni broke through the heavenly mirror god's attack, but she was also delayed by a second or two. At this moment, the other three heavenly gods' attacks were already upon her. Streaks of scorching platinum liquid that were capable of boiling the entire ocean fell from the sky before enshrouding Lan Xiaoni from all directions. Lan Xiaoni twisted her slender body to evade the oncoming platinum-colored liquid. Lanya and Mingi, the two gods, had already activated 6 of their divine rings as they chased after him. An extremely terrifying and powerful aura was released, causing the surrounding space to freeze. Lanya landed gracefully on the surface of the sea, like a butterfly. Her nimble toes lightly tapped on the surface of the sea, and a terrifyingly high temperature crazily eroded the sea from the tip of her toes, causing the sea within a radius of several hundred miles to boil. It's so hot. A pained expression appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face. At this moment, an inky black chain parted the ocean before wrapping itself around Lan Xiaoni's slender waist. Don't go too far. Do you really think I'm a pushover? Lan Xiaoni was enraged. and an extremely dazzling light erupted from the divine halo above her head as she violently swung her body. Boom! A massive whirlpool over 1,000 kilometers in size suddenly appeared in the ocean before rising into the sky to form a devastating tornado. Regardless of whether it was the scorching seawater, the scorching liquid, or the inky black chain imbued with killing intent, all of them were swept away by this unimaginably terrifying tornado. Lanya screamed as she was flung into the sky by the tornado, where her body was sliced countless times by the countless water blades imbued within the tornado. The heavenly liquid god and heavenly god Mingi were also caught up in the shock waves, and they hurtled back in retreat. The heavenly mirror god was a little dumbstruck. Was Lan Xiaoni really that powerful? It had just received the mission to capture Lan Xiaoni alive, and had thought that the mission would be as safe as a mountain with four heavenly gods working together. However, it didn't think that they would encounter such terrifying resistance. Gu Yu and the others who were guarding the West Sea Alliance army in the distance were also extremely astonished at the sight of the gargantuan tornado sweeping up trillions of tons of seawater. It was as if they were witnessing a miracle. If this tornado were to crash down upon the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army, it would be able to crush at least a few million soldiers. Soon, the four heavenly gods around the tornado continued to attack the massive waterspout. Devastating spells imbued with extremely powerful laws of nature bombarded the waterspout relentlessly, instantly transforming the surrounding sea into a land of destruction. The center of their battle was already over 5,000 kilometers away from the two armies, but the shockwaves from their battle constantly destabilized the formations of both armies, thereby sweeping up gargantuan tsunamis that engulfed many armies. This was extremely detrimental to the West Sea Alliance United Army. The seawater suddenly became extremely scorching hot, and the sea monsters were in extreme pain. The gargantuan tsunamis would sweep away some holy martial clan cultivators with insufficient cultivation bases. Fortunately, the Heavenly Human Tribe only had 10 great generals. In contrast, the West Sea Alliance had 5 Dao integration stage super mighty figures, and with the addition of 1 Dao integration stage super mighty figure each from the Holy Martial Clan and True Demon Tribe, they had a total of 7 Dao integration stage super mighty figures, which was more than enough to crush the West Sea Alliance army. Just as an earth-shattering battle was about to erupt in the West Sea, within Yutong City, and Lin instantly flared up with rage upon receiving Lan Xiaoni's call for help. Outrageous! They've deployed 4 heavenly gods to hunt down Lan Xiaoni? Don't they know that I'm protecting Lan Xiaoni? How dare they deploy such a powerful force? Don't blame me for being merciless. I and Lin don't want to fight, but I'm not afraid of an all-out war. And Lin stood up with unquenchable rage burning in his eyes. Xiaolan, I have to go to the West Sea to save Lan Xiaoni. And Lin spoke. Su Xiaolan was also quite concerned upon hearing this, and she also stood up. I'll go with you. If we encounter the Heavenly Sea God, there's no need for that. You stay here and guard against the Heavenly Earth God. And Lin immediately turned her down. With my current power, even if I encounter the Heavenly Sea God, I'll still be able to escape. Su Xiaolan was not an indecisive person, and she immediately nodded. Then make sure to stay safe. And Lin ran to the teleportation spell formation and tried to teleport to the immortal land above water, only to find that the spatial passageway had been cut off by some kind of mighty power. Holy F *CK! And Lin immediately tore open a spatial rift and rushed toward the West Sea. On the West Sea of the Tai Chu continent, the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army of 20 million had suffered heavy casualties, and their numbers were soon reduced to 15 million. They were also starting to feel like they were going to be completely wiped out if things continued like this. Retreat! Everyone retreat! The Heavenly Human Tribe Great General yelled. The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army quickly fled toward the western Heavenly Gate. Charge! Don't let the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army get away. Charge, charge, charge! The West Sea Alliance Army's morale was extremely high as they pursued the enemy. Right at this moment, the battle in the extremely far distance also drew to a conclusion. Lan Xiaoni was on the brink of death, and her entire body was riddled with wounds. Her entire body had been bound by a few indestructible liquid ropes, and the black chains had wound themselves tightly around her snowy white waist, unleashing countless divine symbols to restrict her power. Ming, he held on to the other end of the chains and flew into the distance with Lan Xiaoni in tow. The other 3 heavenly gods were all wounded, and they also flew toward the far West Sea. Chapter 1988. After defeating the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army, the West Sea Alliance Army chased them for over 5,000 kilometers and killed over 1 million enemy soldiers before returning. However, just as they returned, they discovered to their despair that their alliance leader, Lan Xiaoni, had been captured alive by 4 heavenly gods. This was like a bolt of lightning that struck the entire West Sea Alliance Army, and all of them were rooted to the spot, momentarily forgetting to think. Soon, sea monsters began to roar with grief and indignation, offering to save Alliance leader Lan. However, all of these enraged, powerful beings were oppressed by Lan Xingyang. They were going to go into the West Sea to save Lan Xiaoni? Wasn't that the same as delivering food to their enemies? Everyone, calm down. Don't be nervous. Our alliance leader Lan hasn't perished yet. She's only been captured. Our enemies are 4 heavenly gods, so we won't be able to save her even if we go. Lan Xingyang stood at the center of the army formation as he spoke in a loud voice. His words did not calm all of the powerful beings present, and a mighty figure immediately interjected. Are we just going to sit back and do nothing just because of this? Alliance leader Lan is the symbol of our alliance. If she's gone, what's the point of our alliance? I'm willing to give up everything for a chance to save Alliance leader Lan. That's right. We'll protect Alliance leader Lan, even if it costs us our lives. Charge! We'll just die. Countless experts on the ocean shouted in unison. Lan Xiaoni had built up an extremely high prestige over the past 100 years, not only in the hearts of the Spirit Fish clan, but even in the hearts of the Heavenly Turtle tribe and other sea tribes. She held an extremely important position and had a group of extremely loyal followers. Lan Xingyang was not angered by this. Instead, he was extremely pleased. His daughter was even more powerful than he was, and she was even more popular than he was. As a father, he was naturally extremely pleased. He immediately replied, I'm not saying we won't save Alliance leader Lan. Someone will definitely go and save her. Have you forgotten who her backer is? Someone immediately let loose a cry of surprise upon hearing this. It's sect leader Enlin, heavenly lightning god, Lord of Transcendence, tamer of divine lightning. All of the West Sea Alliance powerful beings yelled with excitement, and they felt as if they had been enlightened. Alliance leader Lan has so many backers? A sea monster exclaimed. The air suddenly fell silent. All the sea demons stared at that sea demon expressionlessly. That sea demon immediately felt its scalp go numb, and it knew that things were not looking good. At this time, a large number of sea demon powerhouses were already pouncing towards it. The shivering siren was taken away by a group of sirens on suspicion of being a spy. Lan Xingyang continued with a smile. That's right, Alliance leader Lan's backer is Enlin. I believe Enlin is already on his way here. This battle belongs to him, so please trust him. The West Sea Alliance army fell silent upon hearing this. If they were asked to believe someone else, they would probably scoff at it. How could anyone believe in such a big matter? However, when Lan Xingyang asked them to believe in Enlin, they couldn't say anything to object. How many miracles had Enlin created? Enlin's halo was simply too dazzling. In addition to his power, how many people in the entire Tai Chu continent could match his combat prowess? Needless to say, having Enlin as their backer gave them a sense of security. The West Sea Alliance army began to retreat. Before they even had a chance to return to the immortal land above water, space suddenly split open, and a man in a flowing white robe appeared in the air above the army. "Where's Lan Xiaoni?" the man asked. "Ah, it's sect leader and Lin. Sect leader and Lin is finally here. Sect leader and Lin, please go and save Alliance leader Lan." All of the West Sea Alliance soldiers yelled with ecstasy, and some of them even shed tears of joy, as if they had grasped onto their last hope. And Lin had come to their rescue, and he had come so quickly. "Don't be in such a hurry. I need the most concise and effective information," and Lin instructed. Lan Xingyang and the other Dao integration stage super mighty figures immediately provided him with a recount of everything they knew. And Lin became more and more enraged as he listened. "How dare they? Even the heavenly sea god has come? I was wondering why they couldn't use teleportation spell formations to come here. Who would have thought that they would mobilize for heavenly gods and a paramount heavenly god just to take care of a frail woman?" Lan Xingyang wanted to say something, but he hesitated. Lan Xiaoni was not a frail woman. She had almost killed 4 heavenly gods. I've already told you that underling Lan is under my protection. Do you really think I'm joking? And Lin's aura became more and more terrifying, as if he were the wrath of the heavens that threatened to engulf the entire world. The West Sea United Army, which consisted of over 20 million soldiers, was struck by a sense of pressure that was many times more terrifying than that of a normal heavenly god. "Sect leader and Lin, I'm willing to go with you to save Alliance leader Lan." A Dao integration stage true demon super mighty figure stepped forward and stared at Lin with a fervent expression. He was actually very much in awe of this man, and he dreamed of fighting alongside him one day. And Lin looked at this thin and frail true demon tribe, super mighty figure with mysterious golden vein patterns all over his body. "Your demon, Lord Lingu?" The man was extremely flattered, and he immediately replied, "That's me." A holy martial clan, super mighty figure with a smooth, streamlined body also stepped forward. A rare hint of respect appeared on his face. "I'm also willing to accompany sect leader and Lin into the lion's den." And Lin was a little surprised to see this super mighty figure. "You're one of the 3 founding elders of the Holy Palace of Martial Dao, the true element martial lord?" "That's right." The Holy Martial Clan super mighty figure nodded. And Lin recalled that he had once fought alongside one of the 3 founding elders of the Holy Palace of Martial Dao, the Chaotic Element Martial Lord. The Chaotic Element Martial Lord was a super mighty figure at the Dao integration pinnacle stage, while this true element martial lord was only at the Dao integration intermediate stage. Gu Yu Feiyu, Lan Xingyang, and the others also stepped forward and requested to accompany them. And Lin thought about it for a moment. As long as Demon Lord Lingu, the true element martial lord, and Lan Xingyang, the 3 Dao integration stage super mighty figures would accompany them, and the rest of them would guard the mortal land above water in case the enemy counterattack. In reality, he didn't really need the combat prowess of these 3 super mighty figures. However, as the mighty heavenly lightning god, how could he not have some extravagance? He naturally had to have some underlings cheer him on from the sidelines. This was extravagance, and Lin felt like Demon Lord Lingu, the true element martial lord, and Lan Xingyang were perfect for this role. He glanced at the 3 people behind him to discover that Lan Xingyang was smiling at him. All right, Lan Xingyang was an underling, and he didn't dare to make Lan Xingyang his underling. And Lin looked into the distance. There's no time to lose. Let's rescue Lan Xiaoni right away and let the heavenly human tribe know that they can't bully my underlings. Chapter 1989. Demon Lord Ling Gu flew through the air with excitement on his face as he looked at the white-robed figure before him. He finally had a chance to fight alongside Lin. Who would have thought that his dream would come true so easily? The true element martial lord was also feeling the same way as Demon Lord Lingu. He was actually an admirer of Lin as well. Not only that, but he had also been thinking about sparring with Enlin. However, this thought completely disappeared after the news that Enlin was on par with the heavenly earth god. He didn't want to be killed by Enlin during a sparring match. Lan Xingyang was also very excited, but his excitement was different from the other two. Enlin had risked his life to save Lan Xiaoni, so their relationship must be quite special. Otherwise, why would he risk his life to save her despite knowing that there were so many heavenly gods and paramount heavenly gods at the western heavenly gate? How far had Enlin and Lan Xiaoni progressed? Lan Xingyang felt like there was no one in this world who was worthy of such an exceptional daughter, aside from Enlin. Hence, his expression toward Enlin became more and more gentle, and he was becoming more and more fond of him. They advanced very quickly, and it didn't take long for them to feel as if heaven and earth had been flipped upside down. Originally, there was an ocean below them, but now there was a clear, mirror-like sky. They could even see white clouds drifting beneath their feet, and the sky above them had become a surging ocean. We've arrived at the end of the West Sea, the heavenly realm. Lan Xingyang spoke with rapt attention. This is the heavenly realm. And Lin surveyed his surroundings with curiosity. This was the first time he had come here. This world was upside down, but he didn't feel like this was going against common sense. Instead, it was imbued with the laws of heaven and earth, forming some sort of cycle with the Tai Chu continent. At the end of the heavenly realm stood an extremely majestic heavenly gate. In front of the heavenly gate, there were countless heavenly human tribe powerful beings standing guard atop a massive white crystalline ship. It looked like a mobile defensive fortress, but it also looked a little like the legendary ark that carried hope and future with it. And Lin scanned the area with his divine sense and discovered that there were over 60 million heavenly human tribe cultivators up ahead. This was a surprisingly large number of heavenly human tribe cultivators, even more than the army they had mobilized before. Enemy attack! The enemy is coming. Prepare for battle. The highest level of danger. And Lin is here. On the massive moving battleships in the distance, alarms began to blare, and all of the heavenly human tribe, powerful beings, fell into battle formations. Several million heavenly human tribe, powerful beings, flew out of the battleships and unleashed holy light to form a massive formation. I'm here to find Lan Xiaoni. You better hand her over in one piece. Otherwise, don't blame me for flattening the entire western heavenly gate. And Lin's voice was like that of an enraged heavenly god, making heaven and earth tremor violently. All of the heavenly humans were shocked by his words. However, they all looked as if they were unafraid of death. Lan Xiaoni belongs to the heavenly sea god. You're dreaming if you want to save her. You will never know where she is, and you will never be able to save her. We won't tell you even if we die. We don't know anyway, the powerhouses of the heavenly human tribe shouted loudly, as if they were ready to risk it all. Lan Xingyang pulled out a bloodline-sensing jade pendant with furrowed brows. I can't sense where Lan Xiaoni is. My connection with her has been cut off by an unimaginable power. The heavenly human tribe great generals continued to roar with mocking laughter. Ha ha ha. The heavenly sea god is here in person. Do you think you have the right to know where Lan Xiaoni is? Dream on. It's not too late for you to run now. Otherwise, none of you will be able to escape once the heavenly sea god returns. Lan Xiaoni is dead for sure. And Lin chuckled coldly upon hearing this. Do you really think I can't find out where you're hiding, underling Lan? You're underestimating me far too much. The heavenly gods and the paramount heavenly gods are not here, so they must be holding some evil ceremony somewhere, right? Seeing as I've already come to the western heavenly gate, I naturally have a way to find that place. His eyes suddenly became colorless and shapeless, and they began to reflect all things between heaven and earth as invisible ripples expanded outward for over 5,000 kilometers. Divine simulation technique, activate. Others might not be able to find it, But Enlil possessed an extraordinarily powerful divination spell technique. All of the clues between heaven and earth began to flow into his mind. The trajectories of every single speck of energy in the atmosphere, the trajectories of every single particle of water in the ocean, the trajectories of all things between heaven and earth, and the trajectories of all things in this world. Where Underling Lawn is located, Enlil suddenly turned toward the northeast, and his shapeless eyes reverted back to black and white. Over there! Enlil and the 3 Tao integration stage super mighty figures behind him flew directly toward the northeast, completely disregarding the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army. All of the Heavenly Human Tribe, powerful beings on the massive ship, looked at one another. Could it be that Enlil really did discover where Lan Xiaoni is hiding? This was a slap in the face. Should we give chase? Give chase for what? Are we just going to die? With the West Sea Heavenly Vessel, we still have a chance against Enlil. However, our top priority now is to protect the Western Heavenly Gate. Even if Enlil finds the Heavenly Sea God, there's no need to panic. He's definitely no match for the Heavenly Sea God. A powerful Heavenly Human Tribe Great General had spoken, and all of the Heavenly Human Tribe powerful beings had no choice but to obey. The Heavenly Sea God was invincible, so what did they have to fear? Meanwhile, in the eastern region of the Tai Chu continent, following their last victory, the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army engaged in 3 earth-shattering battles with the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army on the Eastern Front. They fought 1 battle a day, and the entire eastern region had become a massive meat grinder with scorched earth in a radius of hundreds of thousands of kilometers. However, what was worth celebrating was that the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army emerged victorious every single time. This was how the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army progressed. Over 90 million became over 80 million. Over 80 million became over 70 million. Over 70 million became over 60 million. This was how the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army progressed. Over 80 million became over 60 million. Over 60 million became over 40 million. Over 40 million became over 10 million. As their numbers dwindled, their losses also increased drastically. Their current military strength was completely insufficient. The Kingdom of the 9 States United Army was extremely excited, but they were also quite perplexed. Had the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army gone insane? They wouldn't even need to engage in a decisive battle. Just 1 more day, and the entire Eastern Front would be wiped out. At the Eastern Heavenly Gate, within the Sea of Light, a woman of light held a handful of soil in her hand with a smile. The plan is progressing very smoothly. We've expended over 40 million of the enemy's forces, and the remaining 10 million Heavenly Human Tribe United Army will launch a suicide attack tomorrow. That way, the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army's forces will be halved. The Heavenly Earth God's voice sounded. The West Sea's 1 billion Heavenly Human Tribe United Army is also starting to hatch. In less than a month, the complete Heavenly Human Tribe United Army will appear in the West Sea. When that time comes, what army will be able to stop the 1 billion Heavenly Human Tribe United Army? I'm really looking forward to that day. Those humans must be in despair, right? The woman of light nodded. Whether it's despair or pain, that's not what I care about. It's just that the day when the entire human race will be wiped out is finally upon us. I'm really looking forward to that day. Chapter 1990. On a huge island to the northeast of the Western Heavenly Gate, a spell formation imbued with the paramount nomological laws enshrouded the entire island. From the outside, one could see a blue barrier of light completely enveloping the entire island. The barrier of light appeared very thin, but when one looked directly at it, they felt as if they were looking at a boundless ocean. It was so vast that it struck despair into their hearts. An extremely rich vital energy surged and circulated around the island. Countless exotic flowers and plants bloomed on the island, and all types of extremely rare spirit beasts roamed about. This island was called Shiming Island and it was an extremely rare holy land for cultivation. The land of Shiming Island was filled with huge white eggs. It looked like an ocean of eggs, and one couldn't even see the end of it. Lan Xiaoni's entire body was bound by liquid ropes, and her slender waist was also bound by black chains. All of her power was suppressed by the countless golden divine symbols on the chains, and she couldn't muster up any strength. Just like that, she was escorted to this island by the 4 heavenly gods. When she saw the boundless number of eggs, her small and exquisite mouth gaped open in shock. This island was actually filled with eggs. Isn't this a little too spectacular? Lan Xiaoni felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. No, my trypophobia is about to act up. What on earth are you guys planning? Why are there so many eggs on this island? Lan Xiaoni asked with a horrified expression. Hey, you don't have the right to know about this. This grand plan is destined to shake heaven and earth, and it's destined to stun all living beings on the Tai Chu continent. The heavenly mirror god chuckled. The heavenly mirror god brought Lan Xiaoni to an extremely intricate, crystal-like, circular spell altar that was embedded with all types of rare gems. In the center of the spell altar, there was a blue water person with no facial features, standing with his hands clasped behind his back. Lan Xiaoni's expression shifted. She knew who that water person was. It was one of the 6 paramount heavenly gods, the heavenly sea god. The heavenly sea god turned to look at Lan Xiaoni, and his voice traveled over like the crashing waves of an ocean. We meet again, Alliance Leader Lan. You guys were lucky enough to escape last time, but you won't be so lucky this time. Lan Xiaoni gritted her teeth and glared at the water giant with her beautiful blue eyes. Don't celebrate too early. Big Boss and Lin will be here soon, and then he'll beat all of you into the ground. Ha ha ha. The heavenly sea god roared with laughter as a disdainful expression appeared on his face. The West Sea is so vast. How could he possibly know where you are? Even if we take 10,000 steps back, even if he really knows where you are, he won't be able to break my sky sea formation. Do you know why I chose this place to unleash my magic on you? It's because this place is protected by my most powerful spell formation, the Sky Sea Grand Formation. Even a god of creation wouldn't be able to do anything here. Even though I'm heavily injured and couldn't attack because I forcefully attacked just now, I'm invincible as long as I have this formation. A confident expression appeared on the heavenly sea god's face. The heavenly mirror god, the heavenly liquid god, heavenly goddess Lanya, and heavenly god Dark River all wore proud expressions upon hearing this. Lan Xiaoni was still glaring at the heavenly sea god with an enraged expression. What are you going to do to me? The heavenly sea god chuckled. I bestowed upon you the power of the heavenly gods, but you're using the power of the heavenly gods to oppose me. I don't need the power of disobedience, so I'm going to make you obedient. Heavenly god Dark River tossed Lan Xiaoni toward the center of the spell altar. Lan Xiaoni let loose a muffled groan as she tumbled to the ground. Her curvaceous body struggled with all her might, and an expression of shock and horror gradually appeared on her face as she looked at the water giant making its way toward her. What are you going to do? What are you going to do to me? I'm going to modify your memories so that you'll be completely obedient to me. The heavenly sea god smiled. Lan Xiaoni was in a panic, and her features turned deathly pale. Let go of underling Lan. An extremely enraged voice suddenly sounded from the distance. Lan Xiaoni's body trembled, and she raised her head to look at the sky in the distance. Her beautiful eyes shimmered as she yelled excitedly, "Big Boss and Lin, I'm here!" And Lin saw the wound-riddled Lan Xiaoni, as well as the heavenly sea god and the other 4 heavenly gods. His face was filled with rage. How dare you bully my underling to such an extent? Demon Lord Lingu and the True Element Martial Lord were both extremely excited. We found her. Alliance Leader Lan really is here. Sect Leader and Lin's methods are truly unfathomable. We clearly had no clue where she was, but he was actually able to find this place with such precision. Just as the two super mighty beings were exclaiming in admiration, Lan Xingyang heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Lan Xiaoni's vitals weren't injured. He turned his expectant gaze toward Enlin again, and Lin's rage soared to the heavens, and a massive aura crashed downward. The Heavenly Sea spell formation on Ximing Island automatically glowed with a blue light, completely isolating Enlin's unparalleled aura. Not even his aura was able to seep into the spell formation. The four heavenly gods were initially astonished that Enlin had actually found this place. However, they quickly regained their composure. Enlin, don't waste your energy. This is the most powerful spell formation set up by our heavenly sea god. There's no way you can break through it, the heavenly mirror god sneered. The heavenly liquid god also yelled in a stern voice. Everyone in the world is saying that you're evenly matched with the heavenly earth god. However, all the heavenly gods in our circle know that the heavenly earth god didn't even use his full strength to fight you. If the heavenly earth god wanted to kill you, it would be a piece of cake for him. And the same goes for the heavenly sea god. You're still trying to provoke the heavenly sea god. Are you courting death? Who knows? And Lin is only here to put on an act. He's just going to take a stroll around the western heavenly gate. Then he'll go back and tell everyone that he's evenly matched with the heavenly sea god. Heavenly goddess Lan covered her mouth and giggled. A look of disdain appeared on the heavenly sea god's face as he looked at Enlin. Enlin, go back. There's no way you can break through my heavenly sea spell formation with your strength. How will I know if I don't try? A golden halo appeared behind Enlin. He activated his 5 elemental body and unleashed a full-force punch toward the spell formation before him. Boom! A terrifying explosion of energy erupted. The power of the 5 elements crashed down in a frenzy, and it was as if even the sky was about to be shattered. A fist indentation appeared on the blue spell formation's protective wall, and it trembled violently like the roar of the ocean. However, despite the roar, it showed no signs of breaking through. And Lin's power seemed to have sunk into the boundless depths of the ocean, and it was completely absorbed by the spell formation. The heavenly sea god clasped his hands behind his back and said, calmly, "Don't waste your energy. There's no way you can break through it." At this moment, the true element martial, Lord, suddenly let out a cry of surprise. "Look at this island. Why are there so many eggs?" Gasp. There are at least 1 billion of these eggs, right? What are they trying to do? Demon Lord Linggu was also astonished. His eyes widened as he stared at the endless number of eggs on the island. Some of them even had cracks on them, and they looked as if they were about to break out of their shells. What did 1 billion mean? If an army could be hatched from these eggs, then it would definitely be a terrifying disaster for the Tai Chu continent. So you're still plotting something? I definitely won't let you succeed. And Lin happened to discover the heavenly sea god scheme, and a resolute expression appeared on his face. Today, I and Lin will wipe these eggs off the face of this world, even if I have to fight to the death. Chapter 1991. And Lin was filled with righteous indignation, and his expression became even more resolute. He punched the spell formation again. The heavenly sea spell formation caved in again. It looked like it was going to break, but it didn't. It was as if he were hammering a boundless ocean. He could create countless waves, but he definitely couldn't hammer the entire ocean into oblivion. Let's help out too. Lan Xingyang joined the fray. Demon Lord Linggu and True Element Martial Lord also unleashed their most powerful attacks toward the spell formation. However, their attacks were completely ineffective. The heavenly sea god laughed. "Don't waste your energy. My spell formation is imbued with my paramount power of the heavenly gods. How are you going to break it with your measly strength?" And Lin listened to the heavenly sea god's words. Paramount power of the heavenly gods. He recalled how he had injured the heavenly earth god during his battle with the heavenly earth god. With a thought, an extremely pure and domineering, heaven-crushing power surged from his fist. Fist of the heavenly Tao. The power of the 5 elements and the power of heaven-crushing surged from Enlin's fist at the same time as he punched the spell formation ferociously. The gigantic golden fist was surrounded by 5-colored energy, and it was as if it could destroy the heavens. It roared as it crashed into the heavenly sea spell formation. The terrifying might of the fist instantly caused the ocean within a radius of several thousand kilometers to churn and tremble. Boom! The gigantic golden fist smashed into the blue barrier of light, causing it to cave in. The 4 heavenly gods within the spell formation were all shocked. It was as if the spell formation was about to shatter in the next second, and the terrifying fist was about to land on their bodies. It was an earth-shattering strike. The heavenly gods finally remembered that Enlin might not be as powerful as a paramount heavenly god, but he had killed more heavenly gods than they could count with 2 hands. Heavenly goddess Lan Yu couldn't help but take a step back, and her face paled slightly. Thankfully, even though the spell formation was warped and deformed, it was still able to completely erase the power of Enlin's fist. Enlin couldn't help but falter. Even that didn't work. What the hell was the heavenly sea god doing, making the island's defenses so sturdy, and then asking me to come and destroy these eggs? Are they crazy? Enlin, even though your attack is effective against the heavenly earth god, it's useless against me. The earth is the earth, and the ocean is the ocean. You don't understand the characteristics of my formation at all. The heavenly sea god chuckled, and Lin picked up on some hints. Were they going to attack the ocean? At this moment, the heavenly mirror god suddenly spoke. Master Ocean, how about we take care of Lan Xiaoni before Enlin breaks in? Enlin and the heavenly sea god's expressions both shifted upon hearing this. Holy F*** CK. When did the heavenly mirror god become so sensible? What do you mean by taking advantage of the fact that Enlin hasn't broken in yet? Are you saying that Enlin can still break in? The heavenly sea god's eyes narrowed as he glowered at the heavenly mirror god. The heavenly mirror god shuddered, and he hurriedly lowered his head. That's not what I meant. Don't underestimate my heavenly sea formation. My formation is supported by the entire ocean. No matter how powerful Enlin is, he can't wipe out the entire West Sea. He'll never be able to break through my formation. The heavenly sea god harumphed coldly, and Lin's eyes lit up. He had finally found a breakthrough point. Shiming Island was extremely large, and it covered an area of about 500 kilometers. Meanwhile, the heavenly sea formation covered an area of about 600 kilometers. Since that was the case, the crimson light around the edges of the rotating golden halo behind him suddenly lit up. It was extremely dazzling, and the energy converging at the center suddenly increased explosively. At the same time, a crimson divine halo appeared above his head. Heavenly fire, activate! Come out, holy vermilion flame. Demonic star, holy flame. Great sun, holy flame. Setting moon, holy flame. Heavenly void, holy flame. Golden dragon, holy flame. Mutant blood phoenix, holy flame. Boom! Boundless holy flames burst forth from Enlin's body, incinerating the sky and boiling the ocean. Not only were these 7 holy flames extremely hot, but they also contained extremely profound Tao intent. In fact, they were even fused with the power of the new 5 elements, the power of the heavenly gods, and the power of heaven crushing. Just how terrifying would the power unleashed by the fusion of these 3 holy flames be? Lan Xingyang, Demon Lord Linggu, and the true element martial lord were clearly not targeted by these flames. However, they all retreated in fear and unleashed spell techniques to defend themselves. If they were to accidentally come into contact with these flames, their lives would be in grave danger. The monstrous flames expanded rapidly. 50 kilometers, several hundred kilometers, over 500 kilometers. Soon, the holy flames engulfed the entire island and burned furiously. And Lin actually wants to burn the formation? The heavenly liquid god couldn't help but chuckle. Isn't he overthinking things? Does he think that fire is the bane of water? Heavenly Goddess Lanya shook her head. This is the water of the heavenly sea god, the paramount being of heaven and earth. How ignorant is he to think that he can use fire to burn the heavenly sea formation. He's just wasting our time. The heavenly mirror god yelled, Heavenly sea god, why don't we contact the heavenly earth god and ask him to come over? Then we'll flank him and kill Enlil. The heavenly sea god's lips twitched as he turned to look at the heavenly mirror god. Why do you have so much to say? If the heavenly earth god comes over, are you going to abandon the central heavenly gate? The heaven-crushing sect is also eyeing us like a tiger watching its prey. Furthermore, this is the ocean. The heavenly earth god doesn't have the ability to instantly teleport, so he won't be able to unleash his full power. Even if he comes, he might not be able to kill Enlil. The heavenly mirror god finally came to a sudden realization, and it wiped the frost off its mirror. Strange. Why is there frost on my mirror? Boom! The earth suddenly tremored violently. The four heavenly gods' expressions shifted. Heavenly Goddess Lanya was shocked. What happened? No, something's not right. Heavenly God Ming, he looked toward the scorching, holy flames outside the formation. Then a divine light flickered and pierced through the dense, holy flames. His pupils contracted abruptly. What Enlil wants to burn isn't our heavenly sea formation, but the heavenly mirror god released its mirror and exclaimed in shock, It's the ocean outside Shiming Island. The heavenly gods were all shocked. They looked toward the heavenly mirror god's large mirror. Looking down from the sky, they could see that the 7 types of terrifying holy flames had already converged to form a vast ocean that stretched for 1,500 kilometers. The extremely scorching flames had already burned a gigantic hole in the ocean outside Shiming Island. Shiming Island was like an island that was suspended above a concave ocean. There was no seawater in all directions, including the bottom. Instead, there was a boundless amount of holy flames. The heavenly gods all thought of a possibility. The heavenly sea formation relied on the West Sea to provide energy. Thus, if the West Sea was completely burned away, wouldn't that mean that the energy connection was severed? The heavenly sea formation stretched for over 500 kilometers, and the ocean it covered was incomparably vast. If anyone else said that they could burn away the entire surrounding ocean, they would definitely say that it was wishful thinking. However, Enlil was different. He possessed the power of fire, and he possessed the 7 holy flames. This was indeed the case. The surrounding ocean within a radius of several thousand kilometers had been burned away by the holy flames. Shiming Island was still being supported by the holy flames. It had gone from being submerged in water to being roasted over fire. Now let me see how you're going to block my punch. Enlil's voice was as resounding as the might of the heavens. His fist erupted with boundless light as it ruthlessly smashed into the formation. Boom! Heaven and earth shattered. The power of the new 5 elements and the power of heaven crushing erupted in a frenzy. The heavenly sea formation was directly flattened into an exaggerated arc. Crack, a crisp crack, reverberated throughout heaven and earth. The heavenly sea formation cracked open. Chapter 1992. The formation that had extended for thousands of miles was flattened by the golden fist and then shattered like a bubble. As the blue light screen exploded, it turned into specks of blue light that filled the sky and disappeared into the void. The formation that was imbued with the power of the oceanic god was indeed very terrifying, but it also had a fatal flaw. It was quite clear that Enlil had found this fatal flaw, and he was able to break through this earth-shattering formation with absolute power. The 4 Empyrean gods stared at the shattered formation with dazed expressions, their faces filled with disbelief. What was going on? Enlil really broke through the heavenly sea god's spell formation. The few Empyrean gods all felt that their faces were burning hot. Previously, They had mocked Lin for not being able to break through the Great Formation. How long had it been? And Lin had slapped their faces with a slap. Pooh! The heavenly sea god threw up a mouthful of black liquid, and the divine halo above his head began to weaken at a rate discernible to the naked eye. He had suffered a backlash from the spell formation. Heavenly sea god! Bad news! The heavenly sea god has suffered a backlash from the formation. Quick! Protect the heavenly sea god! All of the heavenly gods surrounded the heavenly sea god. Heavenly goddess Lan Ye's expression changed drastically. The heavenly sea god is already severely wounded, so he can't fight. Now that he's suffering from the backlash of the spell formation, he really can't continue fighting. It's too dangerous. The heavenly sea god looked at heavenly goddess Lan Ye approvingly. This is what a good subordinate should be like. When the heavenly gods heard this, they all chimed in. We can retreat to the western heavenly gate first. Yes, the strategic weapons of the West Sea's heavenly ship are there, and the light of the heavenly gate is shining there. It's our home ground, and it's the safest place. The Empyrean deities all wanted to retreat. The heavenly sea god gritted his teeth, and a stubborn expression appeared on his face as he shook his head with great difficulty. No, I can't just leave like this. There's still a billion heavenly human tribegs here. These are the trump cards of our heavenly gods. I can't let them be destroyed in my hands. When the other Empyrean gods heard this, their hearts ached, and some even had red eyes. But, heavenly sea god, your body. No, heavenly sea god, you can't continue fighting. Let us protect these eggs. We are willing to fight with our lives. The heavenly sea god shook his head. No, you guys are no match for Lin. Let me. Lan Xiaoni didn't even know what to say at the sight of all the heavenly gods being separated by life and death. It seemed that no matter what they said or how they slandered him, Lin was still a terrifying enemy in their eyes. They just didn't want to admit it before. She looked up at the white-robed figure in the sky, and her clear and pure eyes were filled with passion and yearning. Her boss Lin was indeed an omnipotent hero. Heavenly sea god, I'm coming to take your life right now. And Lin's 5 elemental power surged as he activated his body of the war god to the extreme. And Lin, I'll kill you. The heavenly sea god also rose into the air. Fist of the heavenly path. And Lin's fist once again released a world-shattering aura. Universe, see, true martial fist. The heavenly sea god's fist was deep blue and boundless. Bam! The two fists collided. Heaven and earth were instantly transformed into a battle of golden and blue energies. This was the first time Lin had attacked the heavenly sea god. He felt as if his fist had plunged into the deep sea. No matter how much he struggled, he was unable to break free or change the power before him. It was too deep, too vast. It was everywhere, it could nurture everything, and it could also destroy everything. And Lin felt that although his power was very strong and could break through the power of the ocean, he didn't expect that most of it would be like a clay ox entering the ocean. It was as if he was about to be completely engulfed. And Lin's heart jolted. He had wanted to use this opportunity to give the heavenly sea god a good beating, but he didn't expect that he would still be at a disadvantage. Pwah! The heavenly sea god suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood at Lin, and Lin was astonished. Was my punch really that powerful? The heavenly sea god flew back like a cannonball and landed on Shiming Island. Heavenly sea god! Heavenly sea god! The heavenly gods all cried out in surprise and rushed over to catch the heavenly sea god. They were all touched by the heavenly sea god's stubborn resistance to protect the 1 billion heavenly human eggs. However, even though they were touched, they still carried the heavenly sea god and ran toward the western heavenly gate without any hesitation. In their hearts, the battle and the 1 billion heavenly human eggs didn't matter. The most important thing now was to protect the heavenly sea god. The heavenly sea god was the future. Nothing else mattered. Don't even think about escaping." And Lin hurriedly chased after the heavenly sea god. He clenched his fist, and heaven and earth suddenly transformed into a domain under his control. Heaven sealing technique. Crack, crack, crack. The heavenly gods all felt as if they were being separated from their original world by some kind of power. And Lin rushed over and stared at the heavenly sea god with a scorching gaze. He really didn't want to let the heavenly sea god escape just like that. Seeing the severely wounded heavenly sea god, a bold idea suddenly appeared in his mind. Killing the heavenly sea god was a little unrealistic. However, if he were to bite off a piece of flesh from its body, and Lin became excited, the heavenly sea god suddenly spat out a mouthful of liquid upon seeing and Lin pouncing toward it. This liquid was like the sharpest sword in the world, and it instantly pierced through Lin's domain. "Run!" the heavenly mirror god yelled as it erected a mirror. The heavenly gods carried the heavenly sea god and jumped into the mirror without any hesitation. Before Lin could rush over, the mirror had already disappeared. All the heavenly gods had fled, leaving behind only an empty island. Lan Xiaoni, Lan Xingyang, Demon Lord Lingu, and the True Element Martial Lord were all dumbstruck, astonishment, and Lin had severely wounded the heavenly sea god with a single punch and scared off the 4 heavenly gods. Although they knew that the heavenly sea god had been severely wounded, it was still unheard of for Lin to be able to scare off the heavenly sea god and the other heavenly gods. Demon Lord Ling Gu's dream was to fight alongside Lin. However, before he could even attack the heavenly gods, Lin had already taken care of all the battles. This made him feel despair. Sect leader Lin's combat prowess is indeed astonishing. Demon Lord Ling Gu sighed with emotion. Since he couldn't fight alongside Lin, he could only become a spectator. And Lin landed on the island, and his heart ached at the sight of Lan Xiaoni, who was riddled with wounds. Big Boss Lin. Lan Xiaoni stared at the man before her with teary eyes, and Lin slashed apart the bindings on Lan Xiaoni's body. Lan Xiaoni finally couldn't hold on any longer, and her body went limp, and she was about to collapse to the ground. At this moment, Lin immediately rushed forward and wrapped his arms around her soft and supple body. He patted her smooth back and consoled her in a gentle voice. "It's all right now. Thank you for your hard work." "Big Boss Lin, thank you for your hard work as well," Lan Xiaoni said in a gentle voice as she hugged the man before her. "You were the one who suffered the most. You were even injured." And Lin heaved a forlorn sigh. "It's all right. I asked for all of this. It was a ruse to injure myself to gain Lin's confidence. At least it was all worth it." Lan Xiaoni felt the warmth of Lin's body, and there was a hint of nostalgia in her voice. We're all great." And Lin smiled. Lan Xingyang, Demon Lord Lingu, and the True Element Martial Lord were all at a loss as they listened to their conversation. They felt like they couldn't keep up with their conversation. They hurt you, so it's time for them to pay a painful price. A cold smile appeared on Lin's face as he looked at the 1 billion heavenly human eggs in the distance. Chapter 1993. And Lin looked at the boundless expanse of heavenly human eggs on the island, and he really couldn't imagine just how terrifying the army of eggs would be once they hatched. However, all of this was going to be ended by him. He was going to nip this in the bud. "Fire!" And Lin waved a hand. Rumble, the great solar sacred fire that was as scorching as the sun, was like a tsunami that shook the heavens, sweeping towards the 1 billion eggs on the island. Then, like a carpet, it spread out. Anything that came into contact with those eggs was instantly burned red, or even completely burnt into charcoal. A peculiar charred aroma began to waft through the air. It smells so good." Lan Xiaoni sniffed, and her eyes suddenly lit up. "Big Boss Lin, these eggs smell so good." And Lin had naturally also smelled this fragrant aroma. This was a rich, high-energy aroma. Demon Lord Lingu was even more direct. "These eggs have all been roasted, right? With such a dense aura, if we eat all these eggs, will we become even more powerful?" And Lin was shocked. These are heavenly human eggs. Isn't that even better? Demon Lord Ling Gu waved his thin arms through the air as his crimson eyes glowed. Our true demon tribe has also swallowed heavenly human tribe warriors before, and they really didn't taste very good. As for the eggs, they smell quite good after being roasted, and they should also be very delicious. And Lin was a little speechless. If you want to eat them, then go eat them. Don't get a stomachache. Demon Lord Ling Gu pounced toward the roasted eggs like a hungry wolf, and his body instantly transformed into a true demon god over 100,000 feet tall. Countless tentacles swept up the eggs in the holy flames before placing them into his cavernous mouth. He chewed on several thousand eggs at a time in an extremely violent manner. Roar. Sect leader and Lin, can you lower the temperature? It's so hot. Demon Lord Ling Gu wailed with anguish. He discovered that some of his tentacles had been incinerated by the terrifying holy flames before they could even reach the eggs. And Lin shook his head with a smile. I can't. I'm afraid the eggs won't be cooked if the temperature is too low. Demon Lord Ling Gu thought about it for a moment and realized that this was indeed the case. He forcibly endured the scorching heat and quickly stuffed the heavenly human egg into his mouth. Delicious, delicious. Oh, it's so hot, it's scalding. This super powerful being of the true demon tribe was stuck between happiness and pain. It felt like it was playing a game of taking chestnuts from the fire within Lin. Although the fire was scary, the chestnuts were really delicious. Lan Xiaoni couldn't help but swallow upon seeing this. She cautiously glanced at Enlin. Seeing that Enlin also had no desire to eat the egg, she hesitated for a moment and finally decided not to eat it. The true element martial saint was completely indifferent, calmly looking at the scene in front of him. Only the glutton, Demon Lord Ling Gu, quickly ate several million heavenly human tribe eggs. His entire body was riddled with wounds, but the energy fluctuations within his body were also increasing at an alarming rate. And Lin's great sun's sacred fire quickly spread across the entire Shiming Island, melting the ground and roasting the 1 billion heavenly human eggs. A heavenly human tribe member wouldn't emerge from a cooked egg, right? This was the process of growing from childish to mature. And Lin nodded with a smile as he looked at the cooked eggs in front of him. The paramount heavenly god's plan had finally been foiled by him. Ah! Demon Lord Ling Gu suddenly howled in anguish. A pained expression appeared on his face, and he collapsed to the ground. His gigantic body struggled madly, and Lin's expression shifted slightly. What's going on? Is he suffering from indigestion? That's possible. Demon Lord Ling Gu is eating faster and faster. He just ate 100 million eggs. Lan Xiaoni stroked her chin and nodded. And Lin, what's in this guy's stomach? I think the important thing is that he just ate a black-shelled egg, the true element martial saint said. A black-shelled egg. And Lin's expression shifted as he looked at the eggs that were still being roasted in the holy fire. Out of the 900 million heavenly human eggs, there were only 15 black-shelled eggs left. This could be said to be 1 in 100 million. And Lin recalled the scene he had seen at the heavenly human holy land, and his expression shifted once again. If I'm not mistaken, these black-shelled eggs are hatched from divine heaven stage heavenly humans. Lan Xiaoni and the true element martial saint's expressions both shifted upon hearing this. Didn't this mean that if the egg hatched, there would be 16 heavenly god-level existences? Just thinking about it made their skin crawl. No wonder the paramount heavenly gods viewed these heavenly humans as their trump cards. Not only did they crush them with numbers, but their quality was also terrifying. So you're saying that Demon Lord Ling Gu had indigestion because he swallowed a heavenly god? Lan Xiaoni exclaimed in shock. This heavenly god egg isn't still alive, is it? The true element martial saint frowned, and Lin shook his head upon hearing this. I've sensed the life force of these eggs. They're all dead. It really did have indigestion. A heavenly god is so bad ***. Even after death, The density of energy contained within them is unimaginable. Demon Lord Ling, who most likely wouldn't be able to withstand the energy density within these eggs. And Lin waved a hand as he spoke, and the remaining 15 black eggs were swept toward him with holy flames before carefully inspecting them. These black eggs were oval in shape and were about the size of a human. They were clearly pointed at the bottom, but they maintained a peculiar balance as they stood upright on the ground. And Lin didn't have any special feelings toward the other eggs, but he had a special feeling toward these black eggs. He couldn't describe what this feeling was, but he was instinctively attracted to them. Big Boss and Lin, do you want to eat these eggs? Lan Xiaoni's eyes lit up, and Lin shook his head before extending a hand toward one of the black eggs. Whoosh, a peculiar ripple instantly surged through his entire body, and Lin's entire body felt extremely comfortable. Ding dong! And Lin's body shuddered. Holy F asterisk CK, what's that sound? After thinking for a moment, he finally came to his senses. So he had a system. He immediately opened the system in his mind to find that a string of text was flashing incessantly. Detected that host has come into contact with the essential powers of the heavenly gods. Now, assigning the following special mission, frowny face, absorb the essential powers of the heavenly gods within all of the heavenly human eggs. Mission success, perfect and enhance the divine Tao of darkness. Reward, karma dual tribulation weapon. Mission failure, 2 eggs of host will be erased. Mission time limit, 2 hours. Note, this mission cannot be rejected. Exceeding the time limit will result in failure. And Lin suddenly felt a chill run down his spine upon seeing this mission. This system's mission failure penalty, sure, was full of malicious intent. The truth was finally revealed to Dubai. The black egg before him was indeed different. It contained the essential powers of the heavenly gods. No wonder heavenly gods were able to use the powers of the divine halos, and 9 of them at once. It turned out that they contained the essential powers of the heavenly gods within their bodies. And Lin didn't know what these essential powers of the heavenly gods would mean to him, but they were definitely extremely beneficial. He took a deep breath. He placed his hand on the heavenly human egg and activated his engulfment spell technique. He didn't need to use any special techniques or tricks. The purest energy within the black egg, as well as the paramount power of the heavenly gods, flowed through his arm and into his heart.